Hello and welcome to the third episode of the Arkane Studios Retrospective. That's right, we're talking about Dishonored today, the original Dishonored and everything that we love about it. I am your host, the Royal Protector, Dylan Muss, and I have with me, as always, here on the Arkane Retro, Kirkland Patzer, the Knife of Dunwall. How you doing today?
Doing very good. I had my name as the Royal Protector right before we went live, and then I saw you had it. I was like, "Oh, you were here
it's gonna be a
first. You
hot
get
commodity.
me."
I
Yeah.
gotta be in there.
I guess I'm the bad guy today. No, I'm excited to talk. I'm excited to talk about Dishonored. Dylan, you and I, and Briggs too. I feel like we've briefly talked about Dishonored, but I'm excited to get a long form discussion out of it and to hear Dante's adventures and origins. So yeah, very very excited about this episode. This was like the big one coming into this retro for sure. I love this game so much, so I can't wait to talk about it.
Yeah, and then we have the rats off to you. Dante, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. We're finally at the peak of Arkane's games, and it's been it's been a fun ride, but I've been waiting to get here. This has been the one. So.
Yeah, definitely. And then making his yearly Geekverse appearance. Last year he was here to talk about Heroes of Newerth. Now he's here to talk about Dishonored. We have Tyler Briggs, Sir Fluffles. You had a million names, and now you've just removed all of them, just down to Sir Fluffles. But how are you doing today, my friend?
Pre-stream fun. I'm doing very well. It's good to be here. Always nice to hop on a cast every once in a while. I actually have some of my stuff set up compared to last year. The Han one was just a mess. I feel like it was.
It was a bit, but it's fine.
Laptop microphone, bad lighting, just all over the place.
That game was a mess, so it was only proper.
It fit.
Gave it some subpar quality recording setup. Wow, I'm very as you guys mentioned, this is the big one for sure. And I feel like this episode's going to be a bit different than just a retrospective or a review in general, because normally, and even with Dark Messiah and Arcus of Talos, we all started by just okay, what did you think about this game? How was your experience playing it? But we don't need to do that this time around, because we all love Dishonored so much. I think it holds a special place in all of our hearts. There's a reason that us and many other people still talk about it to this day, even though it's over a decade old at this point. I think also a little backstory here. But when at the start of the year, I was like, okay, I want to do more retrospectives, just to get more going on the side quest feed, and I just put 15 or more different series into our Geekverse chat. I just put them in there. I'm like, what do you guys want to do? What do you guys have interest in? I'll kind of see what everyone's looking out for. And then Briggs didn't even know he monitored this channel out of nowhere. He's just like, yo, when you do Dishonored, let me know. And I was like, all right. So I think that's just a sign that this game is something special. So just very quickly, the Arkane Retrospective, of course, we did Arcus Fatalis and Dark Messiah. I know a lot of people listening to this don't know what those games are. I think they are worth it to go back and listen to those episodes and play those games. They're very interesting. But even if you haven't played them, go check out those episodes. I think they were a really good time. And then, of course, after this is Dishonored 2, Dishonored Death of the Outsider, Prey. We're going to re-release Deathloop into the feeds, and then Redfall comes out in just a couple months here, which is pretty exciting. It's just around the corner. So that's all very exciting. Let's get right into it. So I want to start with Briggs, since you're kind of fresh here on the retrospective. Why is it that you were like, oh, when you do Dishonored, let me know, what was it about this game that's so special that even though you're in very much podcast hiatus, you're like, I want to talk about Dishonored and come back for this thing? I know it's a nebulous question. You could answer it in many ways, but I don't know. What is it about it?
I think for Dishonored was probably one of the first games that really provided just a ton of meaningful choice into the equation of anything from story beats to how you complete a level to just where you want to take the character, and just that included into a game with such a strong and well delivered narrative as well. That was really big, and I got this game back in right when it released, way back 2012, and that was when actually Dimas, Kirklin, I imagine, as well, and I all graduated high school, so it was sort of a very formative time.
I was a year younger than you guys.
Oh gosh. But anyways, it was one of those times where I feel like these kinds of games have a lot more impact on sort of where you go developmentally just in life, and it was I remember just going through the game, and I'd played other games like Spec Ops: The Line, where you kind of have weird choices, but it's a little more, for Spec Ops, your choices aren't really yours. It's more the reveal of the choices that you made afterwards. Whereas in this one, I remember just this terrible, sickening feeling as I went through the high chaos. And then there's one moment, which we'll probably get into later, where I realized like the impact of everything I'd done and all the stabby I'd done. And all of a sudden, like I just felt gross finishing the game on that playthrough. Not like it was really,
stay in bed for days or something.
Yeah,
it just really hits you. Yeah.
I probably lost some sleep over it. But yeah, that was, I think, just like the how well the narrative was done and how they incorporated meaningful choices into it for me.
It's funny you say that. I feel like so many games try very hard to create the illusion of choice and make you feel like you're actually having some sort of impact or that your decisions do anything at all. But yeah, I feel like Dishonored doesn't have to do any of that because it really is just such a free-flowing game.
The fact that it's one of the few that is able to do that without a million dialogue choices as well. Like it's done purely through gameplay is like it's still incredibly rare. It's
Yeah. I'll throw over to you, Dante, next. So, I mean, me and you are kind of both in the same camp, I think, where we played this game, loved it, and then we've continued to play every Arkane thing, whereas for Kirkland and Briggs, not necessarily the case. But yeah, what was it about this game that stood out to you at the time? And also just tell me about your like recent playthrough, because I know you just played through the game again. So how was that experience kind of revisiting it? It's probably been a few years. Well, actually, I think you mentioned you did like before Deathloop maybe play through it again.
So it was
you've kind of always revisited it, I guess.
Yeah, it's definitely one I've come back to, and strangely enough, the first time I had to come back to it is because I didn't beat it the first time. Like, and I'll explain why. It has way less to do with the game than it does with me. But the reason I was super interested in Dishonored in the first place is because the art director is Victor Antonov, who is the art director for Half-Life 2. And if one day I'll get my moment to shine and just wax poetic about Half-Life, because that is like by far my favorite series of all time. And I think it just has such a novel art direction and like such a weird kind of future post-apocalypse situation happening, or like near future post-apocalypse. And when I saw that like first Game Informer cover, I was like, man, this looks awfully familiar. And then like dug into it, and they actually like bring up that this is the art director of Half-Life 2, and like you can definitely see him shining in that, and that pulled me in initially. And I had really no idea it was going to be like a sim like it was, so, and which is a type of a style of game that I've either loved or been like, this isn't doing a great job. But like I'm a big fan of like Deus Ex. I played Thief 2 when I was like 8 or something. Like definitely have a little bit of a history of that style of game. So when that started coming out about it, I was like, all right, this is cool. I hope they do a really good job. Arkane was a bit of a mystery to me, so I really didn't know which way it was going to go, and then obviously was pleasantly surprised. My first time through the game, I did a low chaos run, which I found to be a bit frustrating. I really put a lot of like weight on myself, and I was like save scumming constantly, and anytime I got caught, anytime an alarm went off, I didn't realize like the amount of options I was limiting myself to, and I think maybe that's why I bounced off of it the first time, and then the second time I kind of understood what the game was asking of me a little bit better, and I was able to get through that low chaos run without as much I don't know, just like resistance.
It can be frustrating to like just save scumming in games, you know. It's obviously like, it's not something you need to do, but stealth games very much make you feel like you need to at times, and I know that feeling. It can be very frustrating.
So like once again, I don't think it was a flaw of Dishonored at all. It's more just like the stealth game in general. Like I would have had that same situation if I was talking about like Metal Gear Solid 3, which is like in my top 5. You know what I mean? So those low chaos runs and games like that can just be, it's a lot of work, and you do have to kind of like save scum a lot, unless you're like, I don't know, Sam Fisher himself. So recently did a high chaos run. My god, that game, it has so many tools that I've never touched. There's so many like crazy things. Like we talk about a kick all the time. I didn't even know you could. Like there's so many good opportunities, just like, oh, you're a little too close on a ledge, but so yeah, really enjoy. We'll get into it more, I'm sure, but really enjoyed my high chaos run this past. Nice. Obviously, the story beats definitely a little depressing, but I have my real low chaos story.
Your true canon.
Yeah, exactly. This is just a little side story I ran through this time.
Like a nightmare or something. Just
Yeah,
something
exactly.
Corvo
I
dreamed.
woke up and I was like,
12-hour long nightmare.
everything's great.
Kirkland, take it away.
Yeah, so this game, I would have played it back in 2012 when it came out. I remember too, like I had a couple friends that played it first, and they were telling me about it, and they're like really selling me on it, and it was just hitting all of like the check boxes that I think I needed around that time. So 2012, I was definitely still playing a lot of Skyrim, and I feel like just playing like stealth characters like that, going from what that engine is to like Bioshock's engine, it's so smooth and like clean, and it's like holy shit, like I want an Elder Scrolls game that feels like this, because the game is just so satisfying to play with, like Dante mentioned, like the tools that they give you, but the different choices and routes, but just like I feel like it's the type of game that I never really felt limited in like what I could do, because the game is just like, well, this is a bullshit system. Like I want to be able to like jump and like use my blink ability to get onto that ledge, and I can, and I can clearly see like the limit to what I could do there, so I could like fully just strategize with it. I feel like also just I mean, as you mentioned, Dylan, like I kind of stopped after the first one. I just love this game so much. I think I have like over 80 hours on Steam on it, but I initially bought it on like PS3 or 4, whatever one it came out on. Like this game has branched over to different systems for me, and I think it really like ages like fine wine for me. Like I think to this day, like I still just jump in and like do a playthrough. I remember too, like it would be one of those things where maybe if it was like spring break or something, like okay, I'm just gonna do a one sitting playthrough of Dishonored because I just love this game so much, and like try and do something different than I've done on previous playthroughs. I think my first initial one probably was like a low chaos run. I definitely was killing people in it, but not enough to scare me away for story reasons, because yeah, it definitely gets dark in the high chaos mode. But I think the beauty of the game is it doesn't really feel like one playthrough. I mean, other than the story reasons, like I don't feel like I'm kind of hamstringing myself by wanting to do a complete non-lethal playthrough. Like it's very creative, and you have to tackle situations differently. But then the high chaos, it's just so fun too, because then it's like I mean, I've watched so many like YouTube kill compilation or whatever,
People
like
are
clean
nuts,
takedowns,
dude.
and like getting inspiration from like people's like stuff like that, and then I would be like save scumming, not just because I like set off an alarm, but because I didn't get this perfect like string of kills or something to just like satisfy my itch. Because yeah, getting back to the gameplay, like it just seemed like I could really be as creative as I wanted to be. I could freeze time, shoot 3 headshots, jump in the air, land on like one of those big stilt guys, and just take them out, mate. Like you could just get so creative, and it was so satisfying when you'd pull it off. So many things in this game, just yeah, they bring back nostalgic memories. Whether it's like just the soundtrack is so beautiful. It's dark and eerie, but still just really, really beautiful. The art style that Dante was already talking about, yeah, it's very, very like its own. And I think just, I guess it's not its own since it's the same people from Half-Life, but like something too that I just think maybe people don't give enough credit to for Dishonored is like just the world that they created for this one game. Like this didn't come out to be like an Elder Scrolls or anything like that, but just especially just looking at the first game for Dishonored, like they, like whether you find like a note or something referencing another location in the world that you're not even going to visit, because at this point in time the second game isn't announced or anything like that, but just how deep that lore really went was just so surprising to me. And that's what made like multiple playthroughs, it's like, wow, I like this game even more on like my third or fourth playthrough, because I'm finding things I didn't even know about. I remember that feeling of like, it was probably like my second playthrough, and just finding like a little hole in the wall that I could like sneak through. I'm like, are you kidding me? I thought I had to go through this one set direction, but like this whole time I could just go through this way, and then maybe on another playthrough it's like, oh, okay, now I'm just maxing out my possession skills. Now I can just possess this mouse or something and just go in through this vent and take me up here. Like I never even would have thought of that on like my first initial playthrough. So that's where I say like it really just got better the more I played it. And I mean, yeah, it's been over a decade, and it's still one of my favorite games of all time. I think I would definitely place it in like my top 5 as I was like playing through, especially the DLC, I was thinking like, is this like my top 3 favorite game of all time? I feel like I would have to like stew on it to really give it that top 3 number. But yeah, definitely top 5, because I think it just came out too in that perfect time for me, where this was the game that I really needed at that point in time. And yeah, I fell just in love with the characters and just so attached to like what Corvo's mission really was, and really impacted I think I the way I played through that initial playthrough. But yeah, just such a great game. I will probably never stop playing this one. I'm curious to see, just comparing it like once I get through Dishonored 2 to kind of, compare the two. I don't think it'll ever reach that magic, because like I said, nostalgia is just it's so powerful.
It's a powerful
and
thing,
yeah, and just man, like thinking back to like, yeah, those spring breaks off of school, and it's just like, what am I gonna do tonight? Well, I'm just gonna not stop playing Dishonored and just see how creative I can get with some of these kills. So yeah.
Did you how much time did you have in the last like few weeks to do another playthrough of this? Because I know you jumped in to some extent, but how did that go?
I just jumped in and did like the hardest difficulty, like just try not to save or anything like that. Okay. If I set off an alarm, like let's just roll the punches and see how creative I can tackle these. And I did get through the game. It ended up being low chaos. I'm kind of surprised how many kills you can get without like raising it to the high chaos meter, because I feel like I definitely took out many guys, but then it would still just say low chaos in the post mission screen or whatnot. But I feel like I was really flying though, probably like, I don't know, 6-7 hours or something like that, like with DLC. So a good chunk for sure. But I mean, overall, yeah, 80 hours I think just on Steam, and then like PlayStation was probably crazy. More than that. But yeah, I really, really love this game. You're intimidating me, Dylan, when you said you passed my hours mark. I'm like, okay, I got to get back on here. Get those numbers up. Those are rookie numbers.
I think all my hours are on Steam. I don't think I've ever played this thing on a console. Okay. So you definitely got me beat when you factor in. I'll have to
reference my PlayStation time.
I don't really want to repeat what you guys have said, but I agree with a lot of it. I think this is going to sound a little pretentious, but for me, like, this game just felt kind of intellectual. It felt like high art. I don't know why. I don't know if I could really even vocalize that when I first was playing it, but just the art style, the attention to detail, the world building is like fantastic in this game. Just think about like the whale oil and stuff, and the way, it's like kind of using that steampunk aesthetic, but it doesn't feel like that. Like to some extent it does, but at the same time it's just like this creating this completely own thing. So I think that was something that really stood out to me about it originally, and just like really enjoying the playing through these levels, and going like multiple playthroughs, seeing these different like the high chaos versus low chaos and what that would do for the playthroughs. And there's definitely still, like, anytime I go back to it, it is like I'm discovering new things, seeing things I haven't seen before, little interactions, whatever it is. So I do love this game very, very much. But I gotta be honest that I had a bit of a melancholy feeling playing through it in the last couple weeks, and when we were first getting into this retrospective, I'm like, okay, just based on time, I don't know if I'll have time to replay this one. And I felt like, okay, that's fine. I have played through this game so many times, I don't know if I need to. But I'm really glad I did take the time to do it, because to some extent, I feel like I'm seeing the age on this thing now. It is 2 gens old at this point. It's over a decade ago, and just going through a couple levels that stuck out in my mind, like the Golden Cat or Lady Boyle's mansion and stuff. Going through it, I kind of had that feeling that, I don't know if you guys have ever like gone back to your elementary school or something, and like you walk around and like the playground feels so small, and like the hallways are like you can like reach to either end, like it's just so tiny, to your like little kid brain that imagined it as this huge thing. I had a bit of that with Dishonored, the first one, going through it this time around, where some of these levels I was like, okay, there's actually only like a couple, really, there's only like 3 or 4 rooms in like Lady Boyle's mansion. Like, it's not really that big of a space. And I think to some extent that's like just, I love this game still, of course. I'm not like having a heel turn on it by any means. But for me, I just feel like Arkane's like getting better and better and better. And I guess I hadn't thought about that because, I was looking through my saves. Once again, all my playtime I've ever had is on Steam. The last time I played this game was 2016. That would have been in the lead up to Dishonored 2 coming out. So then played Dishonored 2, Death of the Outsider, Prey, Deathloop, probably a replay through of Dishonored 2 at some point, playing some more Prey, and then even because of the way we did this retro, playing Arcs and then Dark Messiah. So that means that since the last time I played Dishonored, I've then played every other Arkane game. So my thoughts have changed a bit, and even just like some of the visual quality and stuff, it feels like it still holds up, but it's not like this perfect image that I had in my head. So I don't come away with that with like any sadness or feeling like I dislike the game or anything like that. But it's just like this melancholy feeling that like, oh yeah, this game's like getting kind of old now, and in like a few years it's going to be considered like a retro game, and that's like a wild thought. But you can't undersell like how influential this game is, and just to see the turn that Arkane Studios has taken from here. But yeah, like going into this, and we're doing the rankings, and I'm not ready to pick my favorite or least favorite yet. But I was going into this, I'm like, okay, Dishonored 1 is probably just like shoe-in for number 1, and I don't think that's going to be the case anymore. Like I think Dishonored 2 might be my preferred of the two, and I fucking love Prey, and I've been playing some Deathloop last few days too, just hunting people down with Juliana, and like that game's fantastic as well. So yeah, I'm very excited to talk through all the specifics with this thing because it holds a very special place in my heart, as all of you guys have said as well. And yeah, for my playthrough this time, I played through the base game in high chaos, and then I actually did a clean hands, like no kills, non-lethal playthrough of the DLC, which I had never done before. I didn't even have the achievements for low chaos on the Knife of Dunwall Brigmore Witches, so I don't even know if I've ever actually replayed that. I know I've definitely played maybe like the first couple missions, but then I don't know if I ever did like the full playthroughs again. So that was fun to go through that. And I'm kind of opposite of you, Dante, in a way where I think like as much as you do get more options and crazy things you can do in high chaos, I still think my preferred way is just the stealth gameplay and sneaking around and all that.
I'm with you. I still prefer the low chaos run. It was just the high chaos one. I was just like, oh my god, look at this plethora of tools I didn't know existed.
Yeah, there's a part to it as well where the low chaos, like the assassination targets, those will always have like more steps for low chaos, right? Whereas you can just like shoot a guy with a crossbow and then leave. But in low chaos, you have to do like extra side quests, like mission stuff, and that can be sometimes just additional content in a way if you think about it as well.
I think with that, Dylan, you're actually because you can still kill everyone and get low chaos. It's how you.
I guess so. I guess sorry. I mean like
them.
like a non-lethal play.
Clean hands.
Clean hands.
But when you're trying to the non-lethal approach to each of the main targets is definitely added steps.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad you brought up the. I mean, it's a little bit sad having the melancholy feeling, but definitely on this last playthrough as well. Just because I've played it so many times and I like know these maps like the back of my hand by now, and like there was definitely a string of time when I feel like I knew like all of the safes like codes like off the top of my head just because I was playing this game so much back then. No longer. My mind is preoccupied with other things these days.
Sorry, I need to cut in on that. Are the safe codes the same every time in this game?
I think so.
I thought so.
Maybe that was an innovation because I know in Dishonored 2 and Prey,
ones.
they like randomize it, so every playthrough is going to be like fresh safe codes for every single lock in the game, so you can't. I'm not to say cheesing it, because I think that if you can still remember that and you're not just like, I guess they do that so you can't just like use a guide to like figure out what the codes are. You actually have to go through the steps of finding out what that code is. But that's interesting. I didn't clock that Dishonored 1 didn't have that element to it.
I went right into 2 again, so I might be crossing the streams a little bit because I was like, I definitely had to go. I went up to like look up a safe code to just move through something, and I was like, oh no, I actually have to go do something.
Do the steps, They must have changed that because I'm pretty sure in the first game they're all the same there. But but again, like just going through like on this playthrough, just thinking about like, man, a lot of these guards just say the same goddamn thing to each other, but I don't dislike that at all. I absolutely love their one-liners and especially if it's like a generic line that one person says, but like the response might be another generic line, but because they're like interacting with each other, it's like a different conversation than maybe two other guards would have. I just find those moments like I chuckle like we are right now, like in those moments. It's like, man, I fucking love this game so much. I definitely see the limitations on like just like it's not like it is a very linear game. When you go on these missions, it's a very linear trajectory, even though there is many different paths that you can go, like go left, go right, go in the sewer grate, go underwater, whatever you want to do, go high. But especially comparing it to, I mean, just like I'm not, I haven't beaten Dishonored 2 yet, but like just comparing it there, it's like, man, yeah, they really stretch those levels out for like a lot more than what this one is. And although I see a little bit of claustrophobia like in these games of just like how far you want to go, like out of the maps maybe, or just how high or low you can go. I think it's just one of those things that it's just it's the nostalgia factor for me. It just it I won't probably ever get to that point where it's like, oh yeah, I probably can't play this game anymore, because it's still just so fun to play. And I think that is the main thing that, I mean, really in like all the Arkane games, I feel like they've really just been killing it on the fun factor. Arcs was testing me at some locations for sure, but still, it's Arkane, man. They're killing it.
Yeah, I think going on that just level design and the size of the levels, for me, that's where a lot of the beauty for it comes from, just because you're confined to, like, when you take a step back from it and you, like, let's say like you zoomed out of the map and you have like the map editor view and you kind of get to see the actual size of the level on a grid. They're really quite small. There isn't a lot there, but the way they create pathways through the level, going through different layers, whether you're going through walls, you're going through a vent system, you're underground in the sewers, or you're just like hopping from chandelier to air vents to so on and so forth. They do so much with such a limited amount of space that, for me, it really and it really plays into how you play low or high chaos, where a lot of low chaos, you're making the most of every little passageway, and it makes the level seem just huge because you're going from one little path to the next. You're taking time between going from one spot to the next, so it can take like 10 minutes just to figure out the right path from one room to the next. Whereas when you're in high chaos, like, you know, you can see the objective almost immediately, and if you just want to like beeline it through the guards, you know, teleport across a wall, and then next thing you know, you're just stabbing the guy, and then you're out of there. It's like, it's pretty straightforward if you really want to just get right through the game, and I think that's really awesome. And also just the way it plays into it narratively, where you're almost making that decision as to whether you want to hold back, because you can see your target right there. You know it's easy, and you know you can get to them, but you have to kind of figure out how you want to tackle that situation.
And like, it depends, like if you're on multiple playthroughs, you just kind of want to fuck around with the system at that point too, so that's going to change it. But I think, you know, part of the scale of it is just going to be like a limitation of the hardware, and there's like just loading screens in these levels that they might be segmented in like 2 or 3 loading screens, whereas I think just in Dishonored 2, I can't even think if there's any loading zones like in that game. Like if you load into a level and like the whole level is right in front of you. Like even in certain interiors, like I'm on the 3rd or 4th mission of Dishonored 2, so I'm still making my way through that, but I can't recall if there's any. So that just, I think that adds a little bit to some of this feeling of scale. I wonder if they'd ever, I mean, someday they'll probably do a remake or remaster of this thing, and I feel like with just modern tech, they could probably just make those loading screens not, like even in that first main level in Dunwall, there's like that I forget what the building is, but you can go in that one building there pretty close. It's like 2 or 3 stories tall, and that's a loading zone, right? But I feel like they probably don't need that anymore for like modern technology, but on the 360 PS3 they probably did, right?
I think it's really easy to like. I had a similar experience with Dishonored this past around, where like maybe the rose tinted glasses came off a little bit, because I just booted the game up and I was immediately looking for mods, like high quality or like 4K asset mods, because like it's one of the few out of the retrospective we've done where I'm like, okay, I need at least a fan remaster of this, like, because it does start to look a little muddy on new systems, and I think maybe that's one of the pieces. And then also just going through the DLC, you get to see all the quality of life changes they made so quickly after that first one. So like some of the DLC has like immediate quality of life fixes. Even stuff is like small gameplay centric stuff, like maybe they're not offering me as much mana, so I actually have to like move through this world in a way that's not just like, okay, I'm just gonna teleport to the end. Because in Dishonored 1, I feel like I can literally like flash step to the assassination and back to the boat in like literal seconds, because I feel like I had almost nearly infinite resources, whereas the second you start playing as Dowd, I was like, oh my god, I cannot do whatever I want with this man. So it seems like there's a lot of things that they just like they took those lessons to heart, and throughout their time since this game have made constant improvements. I think I mentioned that in one of the previous podcasts. I was like, I think Arkane does a really good job of taking a good idea and just iterating on it and making it better and better and better, where a lot of people would throw the idea in the garbage and start over, or and take some lessons from it but try something new every time. I'm kind of happy that they do continue to iterate on those things, because it does make for some of these becoming like their perfect versions in a game like Deathloop.
I love that you mentioned that. That's not even something that was, the lethality element of it wasn't even something that was like part of the game originally. Like the base game when they were building it was not built so that you could do the whole game without killing people. But I think even just like, this is in the documentary once again, where they're talking about it and they're like, man, they're like getting closer, longer in development. They're like, man, you can beat this game like only killing like 8 people, just the 8 targets. They're like, what if we made it so there's ways that you could not kill them, and then this whole game could be non-lethal? And it's crazy that was not something that was part of the original pitch or idea for the game, because I think that's kind of been the thing that has persevered. Like that's what people think about Dishonored, and what makes it so cool is that you can go those different ways. And as we're talking about, like it's not just the way you're navigating through the levels that you have so much variety on, but the fact that you can do those different playthroughs. And then the way that affects the world with the rats and stuff, we'll talk about that stuff later, is pretty crazy. And once again, to your point, Dante, like wasn't even an initial pitch of the game. It was just something they discovered and were like, maybe we could do this. And then, Dishonored 2, they had to abide by that. Death of the Outsider, they have to abide by that. And I think now by like Deathloop and stuff, they're almost like, okay, we've done that idea. We want to try some other types of design where you have to kill people again. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? You got 3 games of that, and I'm sure they'll dip back into trying some of that idea out as well in the future. I mean, Prey has a lot of that too, where you can kill or not kill various people, but not to get too far away from the point.
Just because you mentioned it, shout out to Danny O'Dwyer and that No Clip documentary.
It's amazing.
After you're done with listening to this, like if you're a Dishonored fan, it's like required reading. It's excellent.
Yeah, my one criticism of that documentary is the Arx Vitalis section is like a minute and a half long. And I'm like, dude, I want so much more on this game and I'll never get it. But yeah, otherwise it's great.
It's crazy to me to hear that like that's like the non-lethal portion wasn't initially incorporated, because I feel like that resonates so much more with me for like a story purpose. Not even so much that it like changes maybe how many rats are in the world, how like shitty people are in the world by your actions of just killing people, but also just like that redemption story of like Corvo. Literally, like he was completely betrayed. He was incredibly loyal his whole life to the Empress, and just gets put in this situation where like everyone around him just totally wants him like just to take the fall, is totally okay with just kidnapping this little girl, and like they're just so pure evil. But for Corvo to like, especially with these like superpowers and a badass like crossbow and sword in his hand, still is able to make it through with those sheathed and like just not kill any of these targets. I think that's just such a crazier like route to go for the character. So the fact that that wasn't initially implemented, I feel like the game still would have been really, really great, but that just, it like hurts my mind, because I just think that's such a key. Like, Dante, you're talking about your canon ending. That is my canon ending, where he doesn't kill anyone and he gets out unscathed and has a happy life with just protecting Emily. And it's just that's
for 15 years, and then shit goes down and
there you go.
And it's not to say that he wasn't like, he's like, I'm not going to kill you, but I will ruin your life.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. I'll send you into enslavement or
some of them are even darker than just killing the guy.
That is true. The brother's mind. Or minds.
I love that you like going through your non-lethal and lethal and high chaos and low chaos is that they're not mutually exclusive, in that like you can have a high chaos non-lethal route. I guess for the main targets can be like you can still do all the non-lethal endings for all of your main targets while still just driving the city into chaos essentially. Or you can go the other way around, where you go super stealthy, you only kill the main targets, so on and so forth. And I love that it's not like you have to pick one or the other. There's so much fluidity to it. And as Kirklin, you mentioned earlier, that doing low chaos, like you can still get away with like a good bit of stuff and still get a low chaos, whereas if you want to go for a low chaos run, you're not kind of forced into a spot where you have to save scum essentially and feel like, oh, I killed this one guy, I need to restart the mission, or so on and so forth. Like you can just kind of still play it the way you want to play it without just maybe a little more carefully. And then I also wanted to mention just a fun little bit of trivia on top of what you had mentioned earlier, and kind of ties in with what you were saying, Kirkland, is during the game testing, when they like introduced all the fun abilities to the players, essentially all the players found these like crazy broken ways to just exploit these powers and all these contraptions they get access to. And Arkane was just like, yeah, let's roll with that, and we're gonna build the levels now to accommodate all these crazy combinations you found, which is, I love that they were able to make that decision to lean into it rather than fight against it.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that happened with the possession ability as well, where that was created so that you could possess human enemies, but then they're like, what if you can do that? Why wouldn't you be able to possess rats and fish and go through vents and swimming through like fishing grates and stuff like that to get to other parts of the level? And that just makes the levels like feel even richer in terms of just how much variety you have and the way you want to do things.
A fish in this game.
Yeah, you can do fish.
There's
And
all types
I think
of weird
most
stuff.
notably, Lady Boyle's party. There's like a small little area where you can go in the river. Like you can do a huge skip where you go into the river, possess a fish, and it takes you like right to like the undercellars inside the building.
That's crazy.
Inside the party where you meet the what's his face, Lord Brisbane.
Yeah.
who
Yeah, the
wants
guy in
to-
the basement that's trying to get her out, kind of thing.
Yeah, there's like just like a huge skip through the
That's
mansion
cool.
just by going through like taking 30 seconds to possess a fish.
Right, fish run
amazing.
incoming.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how I was able to get that one achievement too. It's like be in the possession of someone for like 3 minutes or something. I'm like, how the fuck is that even possible in this game? And then I realized you could just, when you're in a grate or something, you're not going to just come back as Corvo in a grate. So you just like, you're going to be in that fish's body until you get out of like that little corridor.
smart.
Yeah,
So
that
I was
fish
just chilled there,
exclusive
came
area.
back. I'm like, hell yeah, I got my achievement.
Which, I mean, you mentioned that. Like, this game has an amazing achievement list, right?
Mhm.
And there's still, like, that's one thing I'm saying. Like, I don't know. I will come back to this game still, but probably less and less. But I still have so many achievements I haven't got. I've got, like, I think I have, like, clean hands and the high chaos ones and stuff like that. But there are still, like, so many things that you wouldn't even think of until you see some of those achievements, and probably with that fish thing as well. Yeah, it's just like, how could you possibly do this? And you're like, oh, I wonder if I kind of cheese it in this way. But then that's what I love about Arkane, is they just embrace things that might feel cheesy, and then they just make it like a core feature of the game, and then they expand on this thing. They iterate on cheese, which is just amazing.
If it's fun, leave it in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I wanted to bring in this. We got one question from Patreon from Maddie, and he says, as someone who really loved Dishonored but never played the sequel, how would you compare the two? And so, I mean, this is a question we could talk about for 5 hours, and we're going to talk about this a lot in Dishonored 2, and then also the rankings. So I don't want to go too deep on it, but I think there is a lot of people in Maddie's boats. Kirkland was kind of there. Briggs. I think you maybe booted up Dishonored 2, but you never like got into it, kind
I
of
did
thing.
The first couple levels, I think.
And yeah, there's just so many people that was the case for, where they just only really played the first one. So I think for me, like, it's expect kind of more of the same in a way, that it's, once again, you can do that non-lethality, you can do the high chaos element to it, and just the general things, like the game looks a lot better.
It
Just,
looks
like,
really good.
the
Oh,
graphic
yeah.
quality
It was
is
incredible,
fantastic.
yeah.
Even just like the amount of detail in the world and stuff like that, just all around. The levels are bigger, I think, once again, because the probably the lack of needing loading screens. They embrace these like larger, more lush levels. To me, there feels like a lot more verticality. The game's also just a lot brighter and almost like happier to an extent. Karnaka is just kind of more of a seaside area where a lot more sunlight and stuff, whereas I feel like a lot of Dishonored 1 takes place in nighttime when you're going through these missions, and or like sunset and stuff like that, right?
It's like rainy London versus Spain.
Right.
Yeah,
Like,
good comparison.
Yeah.
Also, I mean, you have two characters. That is a big thing where we're talking about the amount of variety you have in playthroughs, but now you have two different characters, and you probably want to do low chaos, high chaos, non-lethal, lethal with both these characters, and they have different power sets. Corvo's is pretty much the same, but with just like a few added, tips and tricks, and even like they incorporated a bunch of Dowd's moveset into Corvo. And then Emily is just like a fully new moveset with fully new powers. And of course, she still has a blink, she still has a teleport, but it feels different, it plays differently. And then I think maybe this could be a negative thing, is I think with Dishonored 1, the DLC like raises the game up a ton, and the fact you get to play as what is like in some ways one of the villains of the game is pretty cool. Dishonored 2 doesn't really have that element. They had, Death of the Outsider was probably intended as DLC for that game, but since the sales were not great, they just made it as like essentially a spin-off, so it's almost like a trilogy of games now. So I think, Dishonored 1 might be a more complete package. There might be more to it. There's also like the Dunwall City Trials and, whatever that stuff is going on there. Dishonored 2 doesn't necessarily have that, but for me, it's just, I just feel like they just got better and better with the level design and the gameplay and the visuals. So I don't know if any of you also want to comment on maybe some differences there, but yeah.
Dishonored 2 has my favorite quality of life change from like all the DLC. Like probably my biggest gripe about Dishonored as well, they fixed in Dishonored 2, and it is using the heart, having to have the heart out and then switch back and forth between your powers and switch back and forth between your weapons. So you're constantly like bringing the heart up, looking for a rune or a bone charm, and then you're memorizing where it is, and then you put it away. And because I have like the memory of a goldfish, I'm constantly pulling the heart out like every 5 seconds. Yeah. Whereas they don't give you this full like, all right, we put all of the charms on the map. Like there's no use for the heart. They did something kind of smart with it where you can lock one rune, so you can always like lock your objective. And I really like that about.
I did not even know you could do that.
Yeah,
man.
you press F when you pull the heart out, and it like makes it so you can lock one of the
nice.
the runes in the space, and it does make it incredible.
That's great.
Favorite quality of life change for Dishonored by far.
Nice.
Yeah, it definitely makes scouring the world gives you just a little bit more of a nudge in the right direction.
Yeah.
Kirkland, I'm guessing you've jumped into Dishonored 2 at this
Yep.
point. I'm going to cut you. I don't even want to hear it. I want to
good.
save it
Yeah.
for Dishonored 2.
Careful, right?
I cannot wait to hear you talk about that sequel. And I'm sure it'll come up
First time
in this
yeah.
episode. But
I booted up the game
That is
years ago, and did like, I think like probably not even like 20 minutes of the game or something. I don't even know why I put it down. Maybe I had like limited time. It's like I'll come back to this. I never did. Probably booted up Dishonored 1 again.
Yeah.
But yeah, Dill, I think you pretty much hit it for like the comparisons there. I mean, for where I'm at least in the game. But the biggest thing that really like just blew my mind is the visuals, because I was like coming off Dishonored 1, jumping into Dishonored 2, and it's like, holy shit, man. Like the lighting of this game is so gorgeous. And just like the guards, they have like similar like character, like the skeleton is very similar. I feel like for the generic guards of Dishonored 1, but just like the detail, it's just so much cleaner. And yeah, that's where Dishonored 1 is definitely maybe showing some of the age there, just like the textures, kind of what Dante was already talking about. But yeah, just I remember like that first level, just like the way that those sun rays would come through. It's like, holy shit, man. Like how, like that's a pretty old game now. It's not as old as Dishonored 1, but still it really looks beautiful.
Yeah, even in Dishonored 1, like when Jessamine is like dying in your arms, and then like her eyes just look awful. I was like, oh man, like this game has aged.
This could hit so much harder. Yeah.
Yeah.
She just looks like a robot. Let's take our first break. We'll be right back. Okay, we are back. I don't know where to start here. I'm just gonna go with this. Briggs, do you have just like what level? If I ask what your favorite level is, what is the first thing that comes to mind? Is there one that just stands out to you that you remember more than others?
That's a good question. I was just looking at the levels actually. I think for me probably the Lady Boyle's Last Party. It was a breath of fresh air to be able to just walk into a level and interact with like the entire cast without having to stealth around, and just kind of, you can immerse yourself that much more into the environment, into the game, and like just really absorb that atmosphere where, before you're not really directly interacting with anyone except for the loyalists, really.
Yeah, a couple like small side characters,
but yeah, and then all of a sudden you just walk into this party, and of course you're wearing your the Knife of Dunwall mask and everything, but it's a fun masquerade party. Of course someone's going to show up as the Knife of Dunwall, no one's suspicious. And that was just being able to walk around and talk to people was so fun. I also loved that level because Lady Boyle was different every time.
Mm-hmm.
They never she never had the same clothing or the same mask, and so it was one of those things where it's randomized, and so you have to go through all the motions of the level, and then playing that level through. I did that low chaos initially, and then going into like a high chaos where you just send the party into just an obscene panic immediately is just so much fun to do. I think for that one as well is what I really loved about the game is like, and with the level design, is they packed so much into such a small space, because you're essentially in one mansion in that that whole level, but they have such intricacies with the like going into the cellar, the way that you can work with like the air vent system and off chandeliers if you want to go vertically. They have like the little servants elevators and stuff all around the place, and then just like really well placed stairwells and walls so that you have opportunities to just like knock someone out, kidnap someone, pull them off to the side of the party, and then you can walk right back into the party, no questions asked. And then also just like I feel like in that one especially, and I think it's just because you're so immersed in it, it feels like a lot of the side conversations that you could peek through and follow up on, like you would find Lady Boyle in her room eventually at one point, and you could talk to her for a while, and then like just everything going on outside of the mission itself that you could take part of was really great. And I'm a big fan of, I romanticize dueling a lot, and so the fact that you get to go and duel someone is so fun. And I've done that level a few times where I'll go, I think the very first time, as soon as the duel started, I stopped time, and then I just turned around, walked up to the guy and stabbed him. And apparently that's like, you're allowed to do that. No one like freaks out.
They're like, what?
From the
just
perspective
happened?
of the other guys, yeah, they're like,
Yeah.
wow, he just won. We're drunk.
And then after that, I remember playing through it again and doing like the duel fairly, which was also pretty easy. I think he missed, and I was like, okay, no problem. But I love that that's just like a fairly, I think it's pretty inconsequential. I don't remember exactly if it had any
get back-
repercussions outside of.
You get back to home base and you get like thanked for taking care. He's like,
Oh.
thanks for doing the dirty work for me.
You
or
probably
something
get
like
some
that. Maybe-
gold or
yeah,
something.
and you get
yeah.
you get like, yeah, it's nothing crazy though. I don't think.
Yeah, it was just like this fun little thing. Gosh, I remember, I know there's like a really interesting piece of dialogue there as well. I can't remember what it is, but if you let him shoot and then you just stand there and look at him and just like wait and do nothing. Like I forget how it ends, but that's a thing you can do, and there's like a unique interaction that happens if you just wait long enough. It's so interesting.
Just
but
take
yeah, I
the
think-
bullet like right on the face or something. It's like that's all you got.
Oh yeah, sometimes it hits you, and it's just kind of like. It's anyways. That's
funny.
That's absolutely my favorite level.
I gotta try
Nice.
that now. That's like a
Seriously.
new playthrough I didn't know existed.
Yeah, you use a fish to get into the mansion and then go outside
Yeah.
and do that interaction. Yeah, that's I feel like that's maybe one of those ones that I mentioned that feels a bit smaller now than I remember it to be, just because I feel like that one's actually a lot like Hitman, and I just played so much Hitman now, and it's like, oh yeah, Hitman's just kind of like this concept, but like there's kind of more to it. There's like more opportunities and stuff, and I think I felt that a little bit when I was going through it this time, and I was like, I couldn't remember how you're supposed to figure out what the identity.
There's a few ways. There's a few
Yeah,
ways.
yeah. What I want to talk about the different ways, because the one I got in this playthrough is I just like went into her bedroom and there's just like a note there, and for me it was like, I was like, that's it. Like I just had to go get this one note. I feel like I didn't do much, but part of it is that I know this level so well and how to get around that it's very easy for me to get there. But yeah, what are the other ways? I can't recall off the top of my head.
I was going to say, I usually go the book route as well. Let me pull up, because there's a few. I think they end up having like specific parts of the party that they interact with. That
Oh,
are
okay.
Yeah,
from
well,
the
you can
other
also
sisters.
like, it's like a deduction game. I feel like initially too, because there's like different people that you'll interact with, and she'll be like, well, she only I don't know, smokes or something, and then like
okay.
it's not that, but it's something like that, and then you're looking for the particular things. Then when you go to her room, the confirmation is that note from the Lord Regent there.
Right.
gives her away.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the very first time I did it, it was just by talking to the other guests. And
Yeah, and-
Yeah.
you can absolutely deduce it.
Yeah, you can like bribe people with drinks.
Right. Yeah.
Mhm.
That's cool.
Lord Brisby is like dating the target as well,
Mhm.
right? So you wait for him to arrive at the party, and then they start interacting really heavily, and then you know it's the right one as
Right.
well. Yeah, there's a few ways.
I think
That's
Lord
cool.
Brisby's more of a stalker, frankly. That's how
Yeah,
I
Mm.
that's
It's
where
pretty sus.
I do feel like that one is another one of those cutting the guy's
Oh,
tongue out,
right,
put him
right,
in the
right.
mine. It feels a bit dark, right? When I'm like, I don't know if I should be
Yeah.
just like bringing her to this guy. It's kind of creepy.
Especially sleep darted her. She's like intoxicated, just going off
Mhm.
with this random person that I don't even know that they know each other. Like we're just kind
Yeah.
of going by his.
He's wearing a
Uh,
mask too.
yeah.
Who is this guy? But
That's
yeah,
Corvo.
I remember that one standing out to me as well, Briggs, just because of the neutral territory, going in the mansion and being able to interact with people was such a breath of fresh air, which is funny. That is something that Dishonored 2 does a lot of. Like almost every level has different neutral territories where you can just like civilians don't really care if you're walking around. It's more the guards that are keeping an eye out for you, so you can go around and talk to people and stuff like that, and like interact with shopkeepers in certain levels as well. But there's not a whole lot of that in the first Dishonored, so it is pretty cool. Like there is go talk to Granny Rags or whatever it is, or other little side quest things. But there's never anywhere that feels very much like you should just be walking around. But so that was definitely a nice moment, and I love too that the little passive aggressive dig that you can just like sign your name in the guest book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you're right, I think you get an achievement for that too. But every time I go through, I make sure I do that now. It feels so good. He does
Oh,
the
yeah.
animation and everything. It could
Especially
be
if
one of
you're
those
going
things
the
you just click
ghost
a button,
playthrough.
but yeah, exactly. Yeah. Normally you can't do anything like that. So definitely a standout mission. And I do enjoy the area outside the house too when you're getting towards it, and there's kind of this apartment, whatever it is. There's a couple buildings there you can go through, and that might be the first time in the game that you interact with Weepers in a big way. I guess there's some
Yeah.
that are like at
I
the
think-
home base in the sewers.
I think that's the first
yeah.
time.
But then there's a
I
few in
think
like the
Tall Boys
apartments
as well.
there.
Yeah, the Tall Boys. Yeah.
Oh, and
They're-
those
I
guys.
think they're first
Awful
introduced
name,
there, too.
but really like interesting enemy that feels very intimidating. Even on High Chaos, when I was not scared of anything, it still felt pretty terrifying to
a
fight
little
those
rough.
guys. Mm-hmm.
That neutral area thing too. I feel like there was more zones like that for the DLC. This was the first time I'd gone through the Brigmore Witches DLC actually, which is kind of crazy because I've played this game so many times. But yeah, there's very fresh experience, and I found there was a lot more times than in that for like the main story, and as well as the Knife of Dunwall DLC, where it would put you in like a neutral scenario, where as long as you don't, fuck with anyone, you're good to go.
Mm-hmm.
So you could just kind of see that like natural evolution. I feel of like them kind of implementing it a little bit more into the DLCs than, as you mentioned, Dylan, with the second game. There's a lot more, pretty much one at least an area level. So
Yeah. I felt like playing through the DLC again because I was pretty familiar with the first couple levels of Knife of Dunwall, but the rest of it was pretty fuzzy in my mind, and I was very impressed going
Me
back
too.
to that. Dante, to your point of just like the iterations that they made already, even though I think that came out like a year after the game. So they were probably already somewhat in development on them before the game even came out. But I did feel like it was a noticeable step up in some ways. Not that like the base game doesn't have a bunch of iconic locations, but yeah, I think I was most impressed by going back through some of those ones, and particularly the Brigmore Witches as well, like that Dead Eels level that has like the Draper's Ward, it has the waterfront with the boat and all that, and you even go down to the sewers. There's a whole like dungeon down there. Like that is probably the biggest level in the game. Of course, it's split into like 3 or 4 loading zones, but like very impressed by going through some of that stuff.
Yeah, there's something about that DLC that I think makes it one of my favorite like DLC packs. I don't know, maybe ever. That's, I don't know if that's getting a little hyperbolic or not, but like the fact that this story, it now splits out Corvo's story as this like larger story, almost more about the outsider, and like introduces you to pretty much all the main players that are going to be serious like characters in Dishonored 2. Like I cannot believe that I think the first time I played Dishonored 2 I did not play the DLC, and I was just like, who's that? who is this? Why are they here?
Yeah.
And like so much of that stuff gets like the T's get crossed, the I's get dotted in that DLC, and make Dowd like a much more interesting character. He could just have been your like blank slate villain, and then at the end of Dishonored also still not being somebody that you take care of, right? Like that's he's the person who actually did the deed, and for some reason you're killing everyone else, but Dowd is still just like hanging out in the ether somewhere. And I don't know, they just tie up all the loose ends so well that I actually like it makes it feel like a much more full story. And strangely enough, like I don't know if it was like, oh, if this game does well we'll do DLC, but like without this DLC this game does not feel like complete to me at this point, strangely enough.
Yeah, especially like now, like I literally just gotten through the Brigmore Witches all these years later. It's like, man, I missed out on like this supplement story here that it like there's many DLCs where it just adds on to something for just more content of the game, but this really feels like it's adding on to the story. And to your point, like I really feel like the complete Dishonored story, at least for the first game, is including those DLCs. I think the Brigmore Witches a lot, maybe not a lot more, but definitely more so than the Knife of Dunwall. I liked it for what it was, but I just found myself really being fascinated with what the Brigmore Witches like brought into the story, but also the end result with like Dowd technically being the one that like, I mean, it probably depends on your playthrough. I played through like a non-lethal route, so it was very positive and happy times. So I was content with it for sure. But and it might be one of those things too, where like because I just gone through Brigmore Witches for the first time, where I played through Knife of Dunwall a couple times in the past, so maybe just like that recency of like the novelty hasn't worn off. Like it is very fresh for me. But yeah, DLCs, big thumbs up.
Yeah.
Highly
Well,
recommend.
it's wild too that the like villain of the sequel is introduced in the Brigmore Witches. Like,
It's a Lila.
can you guys think of any other video game where the villain of the sequel is introduced in the DLC of the previous game? Like that is such a wild choice just off the top.
There's
Like,
gotta be
she's
one,
like-
but, like it is yeah, they position her well in this
and
one.
the second DLC, like I think she's mentioned in Knife of
Well,
Dunwall.
she's
right?
like introduced at the end of
Yeah.
Knife of Dunwall, so it's as if they're like introducing the villain for the next DLC in
Right.
that, but also the villain of the second game. So yeah, very fascinating the way they did that.
And then like Megan / Billy Woods, right? Like
Billy Lurk.
not Billy Woods. Oh my God, Billy Woods is a rapper. What's her name?
Billy
I'm gonna
Lurk.
think-
Billy
Billy
Lurk.
Billy Lurk. Jeez, Billy Woods is an incredible rapper, and everybody should go listen.
That's good.
Anyway,
I've listened to
Billy Lurk being like Megan in Dishonored 2, like
Yeah.
it's just really interesting the way that they
And the playable character of Death of the Outsider. Yeah.
exactly they gave these characters so much more breadth than they have initially, and whereas like I guess Billy's probably just like one of Dowd's assassins in most of Dishonored 2 and doesn't really have a whole lot of character to her, and then they make her into like a really big deal throughout the DLC, and then definitely in the second game.
Yeah, definitely. Speaking of Dowd, I want to talk about some of the voice casts here, because this is something that I was kind of surprised to see a lot of the star-studded talent for the first game. You'd think that, okay, maybe this is a big game for Arkane, and then like in their further games they would be able to get in some bigger names. But they had like, did you guys know that Carrie Fisher is a voice actress in this game?
I did not.
I just figured that out today before
It's
the cast,
fucking
but yeah,
wild
it's insane.
that they hide Carrie Fisher in the game, and you have to kill like the most innocent guy in the game, and then later in the game she'll pop up. So I guess for anyone who doesn't know, like the announcer in the game, when you go into the High Overseer's, I think it's that's what it is, or the Dunwall Tower. I think it's Dunwall Tower, maybe. Yeah, you go in there, and there's like the guy who's in the broadcast room. That's where you're hearing like these broadcasts throughout the city.
You've heard his voice the entire game.
Yeah.
But now you're finally meeting him.
Yeah, you meet him, and I always love that guy. And I'm like, I'm not going to even in high chaos playthroughs, I go talk to him, but I don't kill him. But if you kill him later in the game, Carrie Fisher, and an unnamed character, I guess, takes over as the voice. And I did it on this playthrough because I'd never done it before, and I heard her like have one line of dialogue, so I don't even know how much she's in there, but that is just a very wild choice for me. I don't know why they chose to do that. If they could get some, maybe she could only do like a half an hour worth of voice lines or something. Maybe that's what it was, but that was wild to me when I saw that years later that she was hidden in this thing all along.
Yeah,
I remember you.
Sorry. There being, I remember noting, because I think the first time I played through, I did kill that guy, And I remember I noticed that it
Cold-hearted.
went from a male, whoever, like the guy spewing the propaganda through the megaphones. I remember like notably being like, oh, now it's a female voice. That's interesting. Never would have thought it would have been Carrie Fisher, but it's there's definitely more than one line. But yeah, it was definitely just like a cool little touch to it. How they don't just like, you know, reuse the same male voice lines because, you know, one male dude switched with another. No one would think twice about it, but they make the effort to change it and then also hide it behind some game actions.
It's wild.
Very cool.
There's a bunch of bangers in here. Like, what is it? Chloe Grace Moretz.
Chloe's Grace Moretz. Yeah, that was
Only
one
second
too.
appearance in a video game as a voice actor too.
Wow.
Oh, there you go. I remember because I was just playing this game so many times like a decade ago. I was watching something that she was in. It might have been like Let Me In, that like vampire movie, if anyone if anyone had seen it. But we were watching. I think I was watching with my dad, and I was just like, man, this chick's like voice is just ringing bells, and I don't know what from. And then it was probably like around that time when I was just playing a bunch of Dishonored, and then I like jump back and I'm like, oh my god, it's Chloe Grace Moretz. Look at that. It's. I mean, just the overall like voice actors across the board, I feel like they really just bring it. Whether it's the guards, whether it's like the more notable characters, but especially going through like the Bring More Witches, I'm just like, man, Dowd's voice, like he's just it's like a perfect voice for like he's got that grisly voice that a character like that, just like the most dangerous man in Done Well minus Corvo at this new point. But I really blown away by the voice acting. And I feel like I always was impressed by it, but like subconsciously, it was just like, oh, this is good. But then now that I can really like stew on it, it's like, man, this is top notch.
When the game came out, I'd probably seen like one or two Tarantino movies. I might not have even. So I didn't know Michael Madsen. And not that he's only a Tarantino actor or something, but he's just in like every Tarantino movie. And now that we've done that retrospective, Kirkland, and like seen all these different roles with him, now I can't get the head. Now I can't like not think about Michael Madsen when Dowd is talking. But like it is a great mix, and it is funny that I never put two and two together because once again, I hadn't played this game since 2016, so I'd never like had that name top of mind. But yeah, John Slattery's in there. Slavery, I don't know how to pronounce that. And Susan Sarandon is Granny Rags. Never realized that either.
Oh, wow, that is her.
Yeah, it's weird. One thing that I thought was strange in the voice cast looking at this game compared to the second. The second also has a bunch of great names in there too. But they pretty much recast everyone from this first game, which is, to me, kind of a weird choice. Like Billy Lurk, notably, is different. Obviously, Emily Caldwin, she's like older, I guess, so it makes sense in a way they could get away with that. The weirdest one for me is the Outsider. When we got to talk to the Outsider here, he's like just such a probably the most memorable character from this game in a way, like even more than Corvo or more than Dowd for me. Just this like very overpowering presence, you know, this mystery behind him. He looks cool, just the black eyes, of course, the fact that you only talk to him in the void and he's just commenting on the choices you're making in the game. And that was kind of a cool way for to be essentially a character that can comment on your like character's choices in almost like a fourth wall-y kind of way, but not really. So that is such an iconic character and performance, and that's something in the sequel that we'll talk about when we get there. But that was a huge disappointment for me. They recasted him, and he's just like a very different character. And like I do not like the Outsider in number 2. So I'm curious to go through Death of the Outsider now and see how that feels all these years later, because I still haven't finished that game. But yeah, man, that Outsider, what a great character that was. Like just immediately back in 2012, 2013 when I was playing this game, that was like such a powerful character for whatever reason.
Yeah, I absolutely love the Outsider, at least for the first game. And yeah, I think just the presence that character brings is very intimidating and imposing, and you can feel the power like when your character is interacting with him. But he also just has he is a neutral character technically, and he always states that, where he doesn't pick sides, he just kind of observes, and I mean he's kind of coming from this place that is the void, which might be perceived as like dark, especially like it might be like witchcraft, like the way that like these powers that he's bestowing upon people, but he really just hits that bar of being that neutral character. And I think in his look as well, like he just like, I don't know, like, yeah, he's got the dark eyes, and yeah, he is floating there, and he has this like dark outfit to him, but he doesn't feel like a monster or anything, like for the most part, at least through the way they interact with him. And yeah, that was a character that really, like, from my first playthrough, I was just so fascinated with this inclusion of this character. And he's not like the main villain of the story or anything like that. Like like the vast majority of people that you interact with have never even seen him, so it's just a really interesting dynamic, I think, that they brought for this first game, of having Corvo as well as a select few know about him and interact with him. And when you find his shrines later on and like other people that have just been like worshiping him, like it's just it's a really, really cool idea for a character, I think.
Other notable characters. I mean, I've always loved Samuel as like the ferryman,
yeah.
taking you in between the missions. He has like a little bit of, he comments a little bit on what you're doing, but not too much. And then just, man, always that moment in a high chaos playthrough at the fucking end of the game, and he's like, "You've made the worst choices. You suck. I never want to see you again."
Oh yeah. Man, and he doesn't he like shoot a gun or something? He's like, "Hey, he's out here!" Like he's like totally announcing your presence. He does something like that. I can't quite remember, but
I think that
terrible.
Yeah, I think there's like layers to it, because I was doing high chaos. He didn't do it this time, or maybe it's because I killed him. I was like, I'm gonna just try. I'm sorry, Dante, but I was just trying to do different stuff this playthrough,
How
right?
dare you?
And so I was like, you know what, Samuel, you just like being mean to me right now. After what you did, you like knocked me out and yes, you kept me alive. You know, you didn't, like, these guys wanted you to kill me, but you at least put me out in the sewers, whatever it was. But yeah, I forget. Like, does he go out on the water and then shoot the flare? Maybe is that what happens?
As he's like just going away, he's like, "Hey, he's out here."
Good to know.
Okay, I took him out quick enough that he didn't have time to pop that flare.
You're probably the smarter assassin in that sense.
Yeah,
you know, you're cutting off
seriously.
loose ends.
I was just trying to be the most cutthroat person I could possibly be. So. Even in Lady Bull's mansion, I just hucked a grenade in the hallway and took her out. I probably took out some other civilians.
Oh my god, you are evil.
Not the canon. That's not canon. It's not canon.
Everyone.
Wrong place, wrong time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that particular moment too. I'm going back probably like a decade now, maybe 9 years ago now. The first time I like went through on high chaos. Me and my good friend Quinn, shouts out to Quinn. We just really obsessed about this game. Him and I were like the only two out of our friend group that really obsessed over it. And like we love this game so much, we'd be playing like single player, but in like it wasn't Discord at the time. It was probably like Curse Voice or whatever the hell the equivalent like TeamSpeak thing was. So we would just be like talking as we're playing the single player game. Good times back in the day. But yeah, I remember like just having that like discovery where like you get off the boat after Samuel, whatever his name was, Samwise, just like shit talks you for like all your poor decisions throughout the entire game, and then he just like fucks off. He's like, "Hey, he's out here, like come get this guy." Like it was so comedic to me at the time, and just it blew my mind. It was one of those like hidden interactions I wasn't expecting at all, and it's like, man, like it just. The fact that they threw that in there, like I love them for that. That's so great. They didn't have to have that. They could have just ended it right there of like, "Oh, you're a terrible person. Can't wait to never see you again," and just boats off. But no, he's gonna go one step further and ring the bell on you. It's just, oh, I love that.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of player choices, I definitely let Emily fall on my first playthrough.
Yeah, it's almost hard not to at sometimes. Like it happens pretty quick.
You gotta control time.
Yeah.
I don't know if I felt like it happened pretty quick. It was very much like I felt like I had like it felt longer in my head for sure, but it definitely felt like a good 10 seconds of just like I wonder what happens if I just don't interact with this. And then yeah, the game ended, and
hopefully you got a
game
quick save
over
there.
screen. So
Yeah, this playthrough, I just possessed Havelock, and then so he, like, as soon as you possess him, he just like lets go of Emily, and she just runs away, and then I just like I turned him around, unpossessed him, and just like kicked him off the ledge, which was great. It was so fun.
I just shot him.
Yeah. I love that. There's even just a lot of ways you can interact with that particular scene.
I used a shredder thing, like those little traps that just shreds them up.
Just
hate that guy.
Wait, does that not hit Emily?
I was gonna say, like,
no, it doesn't. It doesn't make sense, like logistically.
Wow,
yeah,
she's nimble.
She just runs away.
The first time I saved Emily, I blinked up and then killed Havelock and then saved her because I was like, oh god, if the game lets me let her fall, it'll probably also kill her if I miss my shot if I try and shoot. So I was like, no risks.
I didn't try to shoot her. Maybe you could do that, but
you
the
can't.
trap went off
Well,
right away.
I don't know if you can shoot her, but you can definitely shoot him.
Now I'm wondering if you can possess her and try to like break out of the guy's arms. Because you kind of just
That's a whole
aim
new
at
DLC.
that direction. Oh man, I should have. I didn't even think to try that. That's just one of those things. I love that. Okay, let's talk about some of just like the tools and weapons stuff. You were mentioning the shredder there, because I think that was something that always stood out to me as well. Is just they could have gone with generic items and whatnot, generic sword and gun, whatever. But I think once again back to that art design and the style of this thing. Like the flintlock pistol is such an iconic weapon, and the folding sword, the way that works, is just amazing. And all the different tools, like whether it's the little icon or when you're holding it in your hand, I just love all that stuff. The crossbow. What is there a name for the crossbow? I forget if it has a special name to
It's
it.
just the crossbow.
Oh yeah.
Corvo's crossbow, probably something
And
like that.
I love that Dowd has like a hand. He has like a Spider-Man. Like
Yeah,
little hand cannon
I
thing.
personally like Dowd's more because it's like
It's
that
pretty
hidden
cool.
blade thing.
Yeah, it looks pretty nice. But yeah, as you mentioned, Dante, I think one of my favorite things in this game, and you mentioned the quality of life element of it, is the heart. It's just weird and creepy when you first get it, of course. Yeah, I don't know, just the fact that you use this as this tool so that you could find items in the world without there just being icons everywhere all the time is a really genius idea. But then the fact that they went through and just had all these lines of dialogue recorded so that when you're pointing, I don't even think I knew about this the first time I played through the game, but going through like every time now, I love just pointing the heart at anyone or whatever room I'm in, and just like, and you press it too, and it's like kind of creepy in a way, and just getting all these unique voice lines. And I think that's maybe that might be just like I love The Outsider, but that might be just my favorite performance. Is like Jessamine. You don't think about her being much of an active character because she dies in the first 5 minutes, but you get so much dialogue from
opinions.
her, and and she has like her delivery. Everything just sounds like someone's like dying words like every time. So that might be just one of my favorite things. Is that heart?
I gotta be honest. I feel so ashamed. I never realized that was Jessamine's voice. For all the hours that I played through Dishonored, I thought I was like, yeah, it's just some female voice for the heart. That's great. She sounds great. To your point, Dylan, she's really delivering these lines, but that makes so much sense now, and that's totally gonna just change my playthroughs now. Just knowing that Jessamine is always with you on your adventure.
It might be more obvious in Dishonored 2, because I think when you get the heart, I think there's like a ghost of her in the void that like is talking to you or something like that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because obviously that's in Dishonored 2 as
That
well.
that is how that kind of like how you get it the second time. She's essentially like the outsider, like hovering as you're picking it up.
Right.
All in same kind of like story beats that I was like, I didn't put this relation together until the second one. I think for most of Dishonored 1, I didn't realize that Emily was Corvo's daughter. I don't think they make that super clear.
They don't really make it clear.
Do they really elaborate on the second one? Because at the end, I think it's just hinted that the Lord Protector, what's his face, main villain dude, before Havelock.
Oh, Lord Regent.
It's in his notes that he thinks Emily is Corvo's daughter, but it's never. I don't think it's ever actually revealed that like Corvo is her father.
In the first one. Yeah, in the second one, they
it's
definitely
not like
into
a hard
it.
fact, but
Yeah, it was in like the trailer for the second one.
Yeah, it's definitely a big point of the second one for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and like I love that fact though that they didn't like clearly just state that relation there. Like I think on the low chaos mode, there's like a drawing. Like sometimes Emily would like leave drawings in your bedroom for you, and one was like me and my daddy or something. But like again, that could just be the father figure. And then in the high chaos version, I remember there was one character that was just like, "We knew you were fucking the Empress this whole time," and like it's really nailed on the head in that sense. So again, me going through both paths, it's like I think that actually is the case, and I like that a lot more for story reasons, and I like it even more that they don't just shoehorn it in there at the end. It's like, oh, I was your daughter the whole time. Like leave some ambiguity there. I like the decision a lot.
So now High
Also-
Chaos is the canon route, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
You got to
Well,
get
no,
that line of
it's-
dialogue.
it's still his child for low end High Chaos, but High Chaos is really
say-
just forcing it down you.
I got to see the High Chaos drawings that Emily gives you. Are
Oh, yeah.
terrifying.
They're dark.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I
Just
think that's
doing
one of the
well.
first times, like, because you play through the whole game in first person, so you don't really see yourself wearing the mask.
Mhm.
And then Emily does that High Chaos drawing of you just like killing stickmen, and there's the mask drawing, and it's like, oh my gosh, what have I become?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
then
they
I
definitely make you feel bad.
I can't remember if it was Knife of Dunwall or the Brigmore Witches. The one where you're seeing Corvo, like from Dowd's perspective. You know, I love the design of Corvo and everything, but I'm like, man, he looks dorky. I don't know what it is. Like from this,
I
it's
thought
like
it was terrifying.
I don't know. Maybe it was just the datedness too, because like this is the first time going through Brigmore Witches, so like I'm used to the modern gaming now, but like my first time experiencing that, it's just like I don't know. It just with the mask and like the Royal Protector's outfit, it just kind of looked funky to me. But
Mhm.
maybe I wouldn't have had that opinion, a decade ago, or whenever that
Yeah.
DLC came out.
Fair enough.
Yeah, there's a ton of great other differences in the high versus low chaos. Obviously, the population of rats is a big thing in terms of how many bodies you're leaving around, and you can like directly increase or decrease or keep the level the same for how many rats there are in the world. I think that's really cool. Kirkland, you mentioned just like there will be just other interactions in the game, like lines of dialogue, just like more chaos out in the world as a general thing. But then also, what I think is cool, and I think Resident Evil does this a lot, is like the more people you're killing, the more guards you're killing, the more they'll put out on patrol to essentially
Yeah.
stop you. Like there'll just be more guards that you have to fight.
You'll
in the
end
game,
up,
which is
there'll
a
be more
cool feature.
weepers in, like,
More weepers, yeah.
alleys and
Yeah, that
stuff,
too.
And like regular back roads that you can kind of sneak through unimpeded. There's going to be weepers that you find
Mm-hmm.
kind of
Yeah.
blocking those routes now.
Yeah, they like end up outside of the like distillery and stuff like that. They're just like they end up all over the place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it really is an infestation.
Mm-hmm. Any other like high, low chaos thoughts? I feel like we've been talking about that back and forth for the whole thing. Anything else on that, or should we move along here?
I mean, like, it's not anything that's. I mean, you would know it by just playing through the game, but like the cutscenes really are kind of different, but
Yeah.
mostly just for the end. And I mean, you mentioned already, Dylan, but like when you interact with those. Like the outsider shrines, like him kind of commenting on like the actions you're taking are slightly different. It's not too much. I feel like there's other things in the game that really make me enjoy the comparison of like the two playthroughs a lot more than just like what the cutscene is for that particular playthrough. But still, I like how different it is. It's not like some games where you pick aggressive no or just regular no and then you get
Yeah.
the same result. I like that it really changed. I mean, I've never done that playthrough actually, the third one where you just let Emily die, but like that very much you don't get a second game if you have that
right.
playthrough.
Yeah, that's not canon. Killing Delilah in Brigmore Witches, not canon.
Not canon. Yeah.
Which
Yeah,
is always a
just
struggle
from
with
the,
sequel games like this, right? But
Yeah, true.
yeah.
Not necessarily a chaos dependent thing, but I did when I did the first playthrough of just like fully stealth, I think it's called a shadow playthrough. Or ghost maybe, but essentially where you play through the whole game after the prologue without being seen a single time or detected a single
That's
time.
Ghost, yeah.
You still get posters around the city of Corvo with his mask on.
Oh,
And it's, I mean, I get it. It's part of the level design, part of the assets that are already on in the level. But I remember just having this funny, I was like halfway through the game or something where I was like, I definitely haven't been detected, and you definitely put the mask on after the prologue. But then I just stumble across a poster of like wanted Corvo Tano, like the Knife of Dunwall. It's like, well, that doesn't quite add up. But
it's probably Pietro
sure,
or
why
someone.
not?
Someone you're
Yeah.
supposed to be friends with.
Yeah,
It's nice
trying
to know
get it down.
all he has to do to get out of Dodge at the end of this is just take the mask back off.
Yeah.
Mhm.
He's safe forever.
Yeah, absolutely.
Could have been easy. I wanted to, because one of the things we've talking about like the art style a lot, but I Also think just the audio design in this game is fantastic. Obviously for stealth games, that is something that is generally pretty important. But I think it goes beyond that for me. It's the sound that happens when you're just holding the heart and there's kind of like this whistling wind that feels like it's surrounding you. You just feel unsettled. The sound effects of the different, like the sound effect of the blink sounds so good. I think it's possession. It's like quiet. It's like this little like, creepy whisper. It kind of
Parcel
sounds
tongue
like
or something.
it strangely enough reminds me of Arx Fatalis, and we talked about how like those spells are like these little root words combined. I almost feel like there's a bit of a shout out to that in the way like these kind of creepy words that just sound like they're coming out of the void into existence, and like just the sound effects of an enemy discovering you and like that awareness meter popping up when you're going in and out of stealth and stuff like that. Like that makes Dunwall is such an amazing location, such a well realized place, and I think the audio design is a big part of that. It's one of those things too where it's like, man, how did they get everything right? The gameplay is amazing, whether that's stealth, whether it's combat. The game, looked great at the time, still looks very good because of the art style, though it's aged a bit. But like, yeah, the music's fantastic. Audio's great, different endings. Like, there's just, once again, kind of what we were talking about with Arcs. Like, there's so much going on in this game, and like everything is just so well done. So I definitely need to shout out that audio design is just amazing.
They had to have made a deal with the outsider or something to just get everything right. Because I 100% agree with you, Dylan. I think that's something, as I was mentioning earlier, where I didn't really like think about it too much on like my initial playthroughs or just going through the game, but subconsciously I feel like I always appreciated it, and that's probably like the masterful way to do that sound audio is like you're not like pointing it out of like, oh, I'm really noticing this one track that's going, like it just boosts the overall experience. And that's exactly what it does in this game, whether it's, I mean, all the noises you mentioned with whether it's the powers, I like even just like picking up items, you just get like a dopamine rush for me. It's just like, oh, that sounds so good. The way I like collect the coins, you hear like the little change. Like,
picking up the vial, like the health potions. That little sound of the swish of the liquid. Yeah,
all of that stuff. And like I was mentioning like the music as well, but like every time I feel like you either interact with like a side quest or like reach like your destination for the mission, it has this like one like kind of like resolution song that comes in. It's not like super positive and happy. It has this like kind of eeriness to it, but still overall it is more positive. You hear it a lot throughout the game because every time you kind of complete an objective, it does play. But I just love it. I love the sounds of Dunwall so much, as well. Like I was mentioning, like the voice lines of some of like the guards, just their whistles and like hums too. Like I remember like working at my first job in like the kitchen, I would just be like whistling like I'm a Dunwall guard or something. Like it's just really catchy. So yeah, great shout out there for the sound design. It's up there.
The voice cast for the guards is fantastic, and I love their little one-liners. I don't know if I just noticed this more, but so many of them are just like, man, I gotta piss right now.
I love to. He's like, so are we gathering for cigars and whiskey later?
That line.
He's
Oh
like,
my god,
looks good. Or like he would have like a like odds are looking good for that, or like whatever like the response is. It's so great.
It's like crystal ball.
Oh,
Someone could
What
do
a
like
magic
a
8-ball.
lo-fi playlist
Yeah.
essentially just those.
Yeah, they definitely could have like 2 or 3 more different voice actors.
Yeah,
Like you
for
hear the
sure.
same voice a lot, but I don't even care. Yeah,
It doesn't bother me
it's
at
It's
all.
so
Same
established in my mind. It's
When it-
just iconic.
So once again, if it's fun, it's not a problem. And I don't know, it ends up getting a laugh out of you more than once. It's not like, God, I heard this guy again. No, it's just like, I can't wait to hear that guy scream must have been rats over there.
I love when like they ask like, oh, are we gathering for whiskey and cigars after this? And then it's always like, oh, what one-liner is it going to be in response? And sometimes, you get one that doesn't quite add up, where it's like, it doesn't really make sense in context of the conversation, and it's great.
I like the one too, and he's like, did I ever tell you the time I almost took out the guy that killed the Empress? It's like, fuck off. Or like whatever like the response is. Fuck. And like there's multiple dudes that say that throughout the game, so it's like, man, a lot of people just claiming they took out Corvo as I'm playing as Corvo.
Do you guys do this too in, I'll say, a high chaos, or even just in runs where you're killing guards and stuff like that? Do you base your kills off what the heart tells you about them?
No, I don't think I
I'm
ever
just
do that.
ready to murk him, dude.
Man, that's like a fun mini game for me. Is just like, okay, let's see what fucked up thing this guy did. Okay, like this guy burned his family and killed them all in his house. This guy's going down. But then this guy's just like, he wants to get out of this life. He's never done anything wrong. I'm like, hey, you're just getting knocked out and thrown in a corner, but you're going to wake up tomorrow. I put so much weight into what Jessamine tells me, even though it's only one line. And it's like, man, I'm extrapolating a lot here. But some of them are so dark that I'm like, this guy has to go or this guy has to
I
stay.
feel like you don't have to extrapolate much when he burned his whole family alive.
That one's pretty on the nose.
Yeah.
Dante, you were talking about how the art designer of this worked on Half-Life and stuff. Is there a certain element to that stands out to you? Is it the character designs? Is it the items? Is it the world? I want to hear about that.
There is definitely something about the setting, but then it goes a bit further. Like the architecture, I think, is like maybe the main point. Like you go into City 17, and there is almost something similar between like it. City 17 feels like this like future sci-fi, like if. Whereas like Dunwall feels like more of this like steampunk direction, but they feel like they almost feel like they could be in the same world, which I
feel like it's the Sokolov tech too that really feels like that Half-Life architecture, more so than like the standard Dunwall.
Yeah. But then there's like 100% agree, and then there's like the tall boys, which are very much look like related to Striders from Half-Life 2.
Better name.
Yeah, Strider. And then the mask. The mask reminds me a lot of I'm gonna blank on the name of them for some reason, but the main enemy type from
like the security guards, right,
yeah,
or whatever they are.
Name? I told you I have the memory.
Goldfish brain. Don't worry, man. I feel that.
But yeah, they have very very similar similar design for the mask. Like there is just like it almost feels like nods at times, or like spiritual successor energy.
Yeah.
Or like maybe, and like it makes me think a lot of these initial assets might be from that Half-Life game. Like that they took that and were like, you know what, we might just run with this. They obviously stole the guy who was art director for Half-Life throughout that process. So they might have been able to like take a lot of the assets and were able to reuse them or create something that is very much its own from the skeleton that was that like Ravenholm game.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so much about the visual style that stands out to me. I think one of the big ones was the character models in this game. I don't even really know how to describe it, but there's like the hands of the characters feel very big. And just like, I don't, there's so many, especially from Dishonored 1, of the guard faces, because there's not a ton of those. Once again, a lot of repeated ones there, that like I just will forever, can close my eyes and like picture them in my head. But just like, yeah, this very particular design to like the upper class kind of characters and the portraits and stuff like that. It's so distinct, and I've loved to see that carried over to obviously the Dishonored sequels and stuff, and I think Deathloop kind of incorporates a little bit of that as well. But it is such a unique style, and that's why I'm also very excited for Redfall. I feel like some of the character designs are kind of bringing me back to Dishonored a bit. Of course, the same studio, the same Arkane that worked on Redfall as Dishonored 1 and 2 and Death of the Outsider and all that. So that's pretty exciting as well. But I love the guard outfits and uniforms. There's kind of like the blue or red ones, depending on how high they are up on the hierarchy. But the overseers too have an amazing look, and those masks are terrifying. And I forget the name, but like the instrument they use that reduces your ability to use magic powers, like that could have been not even explained. It could have just been like, oh, certain overseers have this ability, and they have like a red band or something that like signifies that to you. But instead, they like made this really weird, kind of creepy steampunk instrument item that is like, oh, it's so cool. They went so hard on that design.
It makes you wonder about the world even more, because like obviously, like, okay, what is the Outsider's reach that they have to like prevent, create like this whole enemy type just to prevent people like Corvo from ruining their day. Combine is the name of the enemies from Half-Life 2. I was not going to get there. But the masks are pretty similar. But yeah, the overseers, that like it's like a hurdy-gurdy almost or something. It's really wild.
Oh yeah, I'm looking at a picture of these guys. That's I definitely see the inspiration there for sure.
Yeah, well, I mean, I would think that they've, interacted with, I think, like, ultimately the Outsider is pretty well established, I think, just, like, within Dunwall existence. And as I believe it came with the use of whale oil and the hunting of the leviathans and such. But, like, you see the shrines throughout the game, and those are clearly just people who exist within Dunwall who have shrines to the Outsider, and it's like people worship the Outsider essentially. Like, we don't see a lot of it because you don't interact with a lot of people just in their everyday lives, but it seems like it definitely has an influence on the city itself. And I think there's that they essentially have like the Purge as well, which I think is something that's done in honor of the Outsider. And then of course you have Dowd's assassins, and Dowd is known like before Corvo, and so I would imagine that a lot of that sort of overseers, their little musical instruments, they've used those in interactions with Dowd and his assassins in the past, I would think.
Even something they would incorporate after the Empress was killed, because even if you are not marked by the Outsider, you can still have the ability to teleport. Obviously, all the assassins in this game, other than Dowd, still teleport around and have like some powers, mostly just the teleport, I think, in terms of the gameplay side of things. But that would be a pretty damn good reason to start getting these things. But even then, like, it's not like, and maybe it's a difficulty thing, maybe on very hard, these overseers are everywhere that have the instrument thing, but it's like it seems like very specific situations that they like hire these guys or have these things on. Like, they don't have a surplus of these things everywhere, or else I don't know, they would have them on every corner. But it seems like a limited tool that they'll only use on just the people who are rich enough to afford it, or the High Overseer, whoever it is, wants to defend. And I think, part of that too is like the Overseers, there's some sort of like religion going on there too, right? And I feel like that's something where they have just like a different belief or understanding of the void, and maybe they refer to it in different ways. And I'd have to read through more notes to understand that full connection there. But it does seem like, once again, it's very fitting for them to use that, whereas if it was a standard guard using that, like, it almost wouldn't make sense. But because it's the Overseers that have it, it fits in more thematically.
Yeah, they got the proper training for it.
In my headcanon, that they haven't actually interacted with the Void or anyone who has the mark of the Overseer or the mark of the Outsider, but they've they've read the texts, right? They've done their study, and they've heard the voice accounts of people who may have interacted with it, and so they come up with this contraption without it having any real world experience. And so, like, anytime anyone is doing any crime around the Overseers, they just start playing it just on the hope that it doesn't.
You like that? Yeah.
It's just their battle theme.
Yeah, exactly. So they just have this
War
random
drum
thing that's they don't know if it actually works or not, but up until now, nobody's ever used magical powers around them, so it has to work. Does it? Did they have magical powers? I don't know, because they kill them, obviously, but it's one of those things where all of a sudden they have no idea if it's effective or not, but they're doing it just because that's what their religion tells them to do, essentially, and it's just a coincidence that it actually does work on you.
Yeah, I guess they almost have factoring almost like an RPG team build in a way, because the guy is using that. He doesn't have access to a gun or a sword. Like, he's fully on that support role, like blasting those chimes.
Bard spec.
I think he can.
Yeah, he's a bard for sure.
I'm pretty sure if you get close enough, they definitely just smack you with it.
Yeah, they probably do.
They have like a whole melee animation.
It looks heavy.
Yeah, which it might hurt then, I guess, if it hits you. Just a one-shot kill. Let's take another ad break. We'll be right back. Okay, we are back. I want to keep talking about just Dunwall specifically. The design of this place is just so iconic beyond those elements that we've mentioned to this point. But I think the fact that most of the game does take place at night, I think, is very powerful for what's going on here. And yeah, the architecture, Dante, to your point, has always stood out to me so much. The look of these buildings, and then when you go inside and just the furniture and the cabinets and stuff, every little thing feels like it was just handcrafted and not pulled off like Unity Asset Store or anything like that. Like they went hard to think about how the design of everything should look, and everything is so grandiose in a lot of ways because you're often going through like the people who have the means, whether it's the rich people or just like the people in power in the government side of things that have access to the more luxurious things. But then when you're down on street level or you're going through these cheaper houses and people are just sleeping on like a mattress on the ground in the corner of their house or something like that, like that, there's definitely an element to this game as well with like the class disparity thing. It's not something that's like a major theme of the game or something like that, but it's definitely noticeable when you're just playing and going through these buildings. And I don't know, even like that was something for sure that I noticed even going through more of Knife of Dunwall and Brigmore Witches, like Draper's Ward. I really like the look of those buildings there. And there's like a shopping center. Unfortunately, you can't like go in many of those buildings, but like there's a little mall area with these different buildings set up. And man, I just love all of the art design in these games, 1 and 2, and I love like that. Karnaca and Dunwall just feel like such distinct places for me too, and that's what I think is amazing about these two games is that they totally feel like different settings, even though they're in the same world. And the guards have like similar outfits, and there's things that connect the two games, obviously. But man, I know as much as I love Dishonored 2, every other game, Dishonored 1 has just such an iconic art style and world, and it just feels awful, but in the best way possible.
I feel like, the class disparity, it's not like the main theme of what's going on in the story, but I really feel it going through, especially when you have individuals like the art dealer or locations like Lady Boyle's party, the Golden Cat, like in those areas, like there's people just completely drugged up, just paying for courtesans and just having a good time. And then like right outside the gate, but like those guard gates, like there's weepers that are just like roaming the streets. There's like super poor people that are like just sick and like totally not doing well. And then you have something like Lady Boyle. I mean, literally on that mission, you have the tall boys like shooting their incendiary arrows at just like weepers, and then like outside, just over a gate, there's people just like gossiping, telling the one character not to go for their invitation because it's like gross, it's in the sewer, like that's disgusting, we don't need to do that. But like it's not even like they're inside, like they're just, well, they are inside of a gate, but they're not, like they're still outside. So like they would have heard that huge explosion, but they just don't even care because they're so in their own world. And I think they did a really good job at kind of forcing you, the player, to jump into those grimy situations to really, really see it. And then of course you're slicing necks in the high rises in the mansions and whatnot.
Yeah, they delve into like serious class issues in this world where like the economy of this place isn't necessary to dig deep into outside of knowing that you're dealing with like a royalty class, and like and thinking about like poor folk and like just how everybody who is not in this like high class sector it has to deal with all of these like real problems, and also just like monsters and all these different like things kind of like roaming the streets, and they're just trying to survive. Like it puts everybody who is not at this like line of like high class and like ritz and glamour to the absolute opposite of it. And it's just it makes you feel like you need to change things, which I think is a pretty cool push for Corvo. Like obviously he has his outside influence, he needs to save his daughter, which he does fairly quickly, and then get revenge. But he also like there's something to be fixed here. Like this world is kind of suffering, and you have an opportunity to remove the key players and hopefully put the right people in position. Your daughter, to fix these things. I don't know why your daughter is the right person, but I don't know, between like her and Sokolov, like they seem like they could get some things done. But I don't know. It definitely makes you feel like there's stakes a lot more than there would be otherwise if everybody was like living like the life of luxury in Dunwall.
And like I feel like they throw a lot of emphasis, I mean, with whether it's notes or whatnot, but like there's a lot of emphasis on people just being like what's it called, evicted from their house of living. Like they just can't live in their house anymore, and so like where are they gonna go? Just on the streets with the weepers, pretty much, because that's just how things are run right now. So it really Yeah, that's the safest and that's the safest option probably. So they really shine a good light on just that corruption and the just the class system.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I
and
love.
I think like with
Go ahead.
the endings as well, it really ties in that so much of the kind of ending narrative that you finish with, it weighs heavily on just sort of the outcome that Dunwall as a whole faces, and not just what you and Emily face at the end, and sort of how you affect the world around you, because it could very easily just hand wave and give you a happily ever after, and then not really worry about whatever else is going on with the city, or you escape from the plague-ridden city and you flee to Karnaca and you live happily ever after, right? But it really puts an emphasis on how you leave the world around you, which is it's great when you get to see the effects as you're playing through.
Mm-hmm. I love the inclusion of whale oil as being like the source of power in this world, because obviously it's like a mechanical thing, explosive barrels that you can pick up and throw around, power certain things, or take them out of a watchtower or one of those electrified gates, whatever it is. But also, man, like that imagery of the slaughterhouse and the knife of Dunwall is like forever embedded in my mind, and just like these terrifying cries of this whale that's just propped up as they're just like sucking the life out of it. And to think that that's the process they go through just to create use like power and like just anything that takes power in the city is because of this is just totally messed up. But I love that additional detail has always like stood out in my mind, the whale oil.
Yeah, because it's like every Sokolov technology, which is just this like fascinating piece of technology, is powered by this source. And like, although you do see whaling ships in the main game, I think like right in the opening, like if you just look off to your left, you can see a ship just like with a giant whale on it. It's like,
right.
okay, yeah, they're fishing for whales, which I don't know, might be inhumane, might not be. It looks like it's dead in that moment. But knowing, like, going through Knife of Dunwall, just knowing that's how it's done, it's like, oh wow, I probably shouldn't have just wasted this so much by like tossing this at rats or whatever I was doing. This is it just adds a lot more weight, I think, on this one thing that you go through the main game and you don't really think of it in that sense, but the DLC shines a new light on a dark light.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, even down to just like the food and drink in the world, like there's just Circonan grapes or like whatever random stuff. It's like this is just a real world thing, but also the like weird fish that they come up with. And you'll see it like, maybe it's like drawn as like a mural on the side of a building, and you're just picking up all these like tin cans of like random food and stuff like that. I just feel like even down to those little details, they decided to really go hard on the design of all these things, and always something that I appreciate, and why Dunwall will always be just one of my favorite video game locations. I think just the world building, truly unmatched.
Yeah.
Yeah. They started it in Arcs, right? That was like one of my favorite things about Arcs. It's like they may never come back to this, but they put a lot of lore into this place, and the same deal with Dishonored. It's like they're writing whole books within these games and really like fleshing out these cities that are like in a class of their own.
Yeah. And like right there, like with the notes or the books, just fleshing out the world, the interactables, the way that you interact with like a lever or something. I remember seeing this in like the initial E3 demo where I'm like, man, this game just reminds me of BioShock. And I have a lot of love for that first BioShock game. I don't know if it was just like inspired, like the team was inspired by BioShock or something. I don't know if there's a deeper story there, but that was one thing too where I was like, man, this reminds me of one of my favorite games of all time. I'm excited for this. And like now this is like, I don't know. I haven't played the first BioShock in a very long time, so it'd be interesting to compare the two because that first game really is high on my list. But yeah, just a lot of things that reminded me of it, whether you're seeing like those logs of just getting some more backstory, which like some of them might be story like they might advance the story, but some of them too are just like fleshing out a little bit more of the world of Rapture. And like here we are in Dishonored, or we're in Dishonored, we're in Dunwall, and we're just finding out maybe something that could be story related. It could be talking about Karnaka, or it could be, that one note that you find where it's like the Lord Regent saying like, yeah, someone signed Corvo's name at the the Lady Boyle's party. What's going on there? It must be a trick. Like all of those things. I really feel that they boost the overall experience more so than if they weren't in it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was particularly fond of the whaling journals you would find, and like the sailors and captains' experiences. And then also, I think there was one. I don't remember if this was like early on in Dishonored 2 when you're on the boat, or it might have been the Knife of Dunwall. But it talked about accounts of a researcher going across the ocean to some foreign jungle, essentially, and like his experiences with like all these like crazy insects and weird happenings going on, and how he was like he never wants to leave the Isles again, like if he makes it back. And it was just really cool to see that they're willing to kind of like flesh out so much that isn't actually Dunwall itself, but like how the rest of the world interacts with Dunwall, or how Dunwall interacts with, it's building a greater world where you're not just some isolated group of islands. There are other continents, there are other places that have trade routes and do interact with Dunwall as a whole.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
To experience that later.
Yeah, number
That's
2.
true. Maybe, yeah.
And then back to Dunwall, of course, at the end.
Yeah.
Let's talk more about some of these individual levels. I asked Briggs like an hour and a half ago what level stood out to him, but Dante, over to you. Is there a level that when you think of Dishonored that comes to your mind immediately?
Yeah, so big fan of the Royal Physician.
Okay.
I think that has such an interesting layout that you don't experience in a lot of the other levels. It's outside, it's during the day, so it's one of the rarities there. And it is one of the like most vertical levels in the game. So like you end up in you're at the start of the level, you're kind of walking into this part of town, and you're there to get Sokolov, right, which I think is he's such a key player. And like especially I have like something about Dishonored 2 has stuck with me more than Dishonored 1, not from a like preference level, just memory. And I like think of the characters in Dishonored 2 a lot more than I think about the characters in Dishonored 1. And Sokolov ends up being one of my favorites. So the fact that like this is your first interaction with Sokolov is pretty huge. He is like got such a strong lore behind him before you meet him, because he's the reason that like all of your health potions exist and all of this technology exists. And you're like, oh god, I get to meet the brain here. And as you like work your way through that level, there's this like huge bridge that this gap between water that you're like, all right, this is a challenge. I have to figure out how to get across this space. And there's a million, once again, ways to do that. You can go under, you can swim across. But my favorite way is literally you can make the bridge go up.
Yeah.
You make the bridge go all the way up, and then you climb all the way to the top of the bridge, and you literally can just walk across this like beam at the highest point in the entire game.
I don't think I've ever done that before. There's
even an achievement. There's an achievement for jumping off of it into the water. So you get this like, I don't know, plenty of games have done that, but it's just a really fun experience to like launch yourself in from a height that 100% would kill a human. And diving off of this, it's apparently like the highest point in Dunwall, and you get to this beautiful view. Yeah, and I don't know, something about that space I think is just like one of my favorite just locations in the entire game. And then once you get onto that other side, you get to this kind of like apartment complex that has like greenhouses, and you end up in Sokolov's like they're essentially like enslaving him to do work.
Right.
And he's just there like chucking along doing science stuff, and you get to kind of like interact with his space, which I think is I don't know, just really interesting. Like it's one of the like I said, he is kind of the mastermind behind a lot of the technology that goes on in this place, and it's cool to just see him in his element. Getting in and out of that place is a little tougher, I think that's when I felt a little bit of like a, I don't know, just the game definitely has a little bit of a difficulty spike there too. Like getting in and out of that area is a different interaction than you have to do in the rest of the game, because it's not like you fail if you kill him, right? So you have to assassin, or you have to like choke him out or use a sleep dart, and you have to carry this man to the end of the level now too, which like just adds that extra layer. Where it's like, okay, get in, get out is usually the name of the game, but this one you have to like, now that I have this man and I'm hauling him around, it's kind of tough to like navigate that level from that point forward. You're like, oh, okay, crap, I didn't take out all these guys, or I have to make sure I'm like actually not seen now. Like high chaos doesn't work in your favor if people are shooting at you and they kill your target. So yeah, really dig Royal Physician. I think it's a nice little twist on the mechanics there too.
You made me remember another iconic sound effect for me in this game was when you choke someone out and it's like the little like the little like breath sound, because it's always the exact same one for everyone across the whole game. But man, I love that. Even that animation, like it just, that's kind of dark, but it feels so good to like sneak up behind someone, choke them out, and then hold F to like carry them too. Oh, it just feels so good. But yeah, I that another great mission. I would say that about every single one in here, just because their quality is so high. But particularly, I love the ending sequence. Just how weird his whole base kind of looks up in this like kind of glass house above everything else. It just like stuck on the side of a building. It's very out of place. But like then you go in there and it's actually like very nicely designed, and there's the greenhouse up top. So it's kind of funky the way it's put together. But yeah, I love walking around the rooftop of that place. That's very cool.
That one mission in particular, I almost have to like. It's funny, Dante, you're just talking about like the difficulty of it, where I feel like there is a very, very, very simple way to actually go about that, where there's just a chain like hanging down from his greenhouse, where like if you have level 2 blink, you can just get to it from like the outside. Like you don't even have to go inside of his house. Like you can just blink
Once
to the
again,
chain,
missed on me.
go up, sleep dart him, pick him up, and then you could just like jump off like that roof onto like the other one, and then you just like go down to the boat to get away from him. And I just feel like it's a little bit too simple, so I like the challenge of actually going in through the front door or whatever it is, because it's just, I feel like I could almost like speed run that section, just having that chain there. It's always been something where like as soon as I discovered it, I'm almost sad that I discovered this, because now it's like why would I even bother of going inside other than just hurtling through it. And it's funny you were talking about the high point on that bridge there. You can definitely jump off into the water, but I'll take you one step further. You can also double jump, double blink out, and if you time it properly, you can land on a guard and just like execute him.
Amazing.
So that was one when I was just trying to get super creative like with my kills or whatnot. Definitely had to save scum multiple times because I like slightly was off, shatter both my ankles. I'm just dead. I'm just plastered there on the ground. But you don't take fall damage if you land on a guard.
Good to know.
That's
Physics
amazing.
don't make sense there at all, but neither did they if you were landing in the water.
Yeah. But I do love the aspect of actually having to take out a like, not take him out. You're taking out everyone in this game, but like physically take him to an exfil location. Just a different twist on what you really have to do throughout the game. I also think like the opening to that mission is really great. Like, 'cause I'm pretty sure if I remember correctly, it's where you take like you rescue Emily, you get back, and it's that very same night. It's like, Emily's gonna get some rest, but you have to go out there and get Sokolov right now. And I just liked how like the chronological order of that sequence of events was, because like I just went through an entire like really risky situation to get Emily back, and we're finally back, and now I just have to go out again. Well, it's like, no problem for me. I'm just a ghost. I'm Corvo Tano. I'm a corpse at this point. So I just really felt like a Batman type character. Like I'm not human. I am this ghost figure that is on the wanted posters throughout the world.
That's amazing. Well, I think we're going so long here that Briggs actually has to get going. Briggs, do you have anything else you want to say about this game? Because I think we're probably going to go for another while here. I got to talk about a lot more stuff. But what do you want to say on your way out of here? And also, thank you for joining us. It was fun to have you here.
Good to see you.
Yeah,
This has been like a long time Geekverse thing. Is like me, Kirklin, and Briggs just talking about Dishonored for years and years and years and years. So it's been fun to finally do this. I'm glad you could join us for it.
Yeah, absolutely. There's not a better cast I'd want to be part on unless we finally do a long dark cast. In which case,
Someday.
Sign me up, coach. But yeah, happy to be back. I'm not Honestly, I don't think I really have any closing statements. We've covered pretty much most of everything. As we covered at the start of the cast, a lot of this is just nostalgia for me, as I have not had the chance to play through it again. But it's, this has really been wonderful, and I'm honestly, like, I feel like my laptop right now could probably run it, and I'm very seriously considering just downloading it.
Do it.
Gotta, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's just like, for me, and like, it's one of those games that just really drove home. Like, it's just such an emotional game with such a linear narrative, and I don't know how they managed to do it. And such, like, they make you have such great choices, and they really hit home. And like the way they build the characters without really in such a confined space, along with their level design, is just incredible. So it's Arkane just does a great job, and I'm not playing a ton of games, but it's always cool to hear about what they're doing next. Like with Deathloop got me really excited, and Dishonored 2 was something I was super hyped on. And I'm already starting to Google Redfall now that I didn't hear about it, but just hearing the name, I was like, okay, this is probably going to be good. So anyways, yeah, thanks again for having me on the cast. Happy to be here. Kind of sad I have to leave, but life happens. So
Life happens.
yeah, I'm sure I'll be back at some point, hopefully within the year. So yeah, I'll talk to you guys later.
See you, man.
See you, dude.
Yeah.
Peace.
All right, Kirkland, over to you. What is your level? Do you have one? I know I don't have one. That's my cop out.
Yeah.
But yeah, what is your one? What is the first thing comes to mind when you think of Dishonored?
It's very tough because I feel like I've gone through kind of eras of having that one level that is just my absolute favorite. Definitely the Sokolov one is up there for sure. For everything we kind of already previously talked about, but also just like the way that you just are coming off of a mission and then going back out there like right away. I just really like that setup, and as well as all the architecture, as well as the first time I went through like Sokolov's mansion. I didn't see that chain on my first playthrough, so it was very challenging to get through all those overseers and everything.
Suspicious if this chain exists.
I think now my favorite one is probably like Return to Dunwall, when you are just like this is your main target right here, the Lord Regent, the one guy that's just, especially like on a high chaos playthrough, that is just so satisfying, chopping through everyone just to get up to like the way, like the huge like add-on that the Lord Regent did, because like the Tower of Dunwall looks a little bit different than previously or before you were Dishonored. He's got a lot more defenses on there, so it's just so satisfying on a high chaos run to just chop through everything. That was one too where I did a lot of save scumming, just trying to get like the perfect high chaos playthrough where you're just like, you're basically like full sprinting the whole time, but you're just like cleanly taking everyone out. Just so satisfying to go through that. But so that's probably like my favorite for high chaos purposes. But I think my overall favorite mission actually is the House of Pleasure, the Golden Cat mission. That was one that was showcased on the E3 demo. I remember them showcasing just taking out like the brothers and whatnot. And like, although I did see it already on that E3 demo, I just remember the first time I actually played that game and got that level, and it's like, man, this, like, I was waiting for this level like this whole time, of ever since I saw it at E3. Just that was another one too where on multiple playthroughs I found different ways to really go about the place, and really just found like an optimal way to do it, where like looking back on my first playthrough, it's like, man, I had no idea how to play this game. Clearly, like I was really not even looking up like at all. For so many sequences you can either double jump onto a ledge or just like jump, blink, and just like get to a destination really, really quickly. And I like how it's like your target isn't always in the same location on that one too, so it's a little bit of you got some replayability there. And yeah, I just really, really like that setup. Obviously, that's the one where you're saving Emily, and I really felt the drive for that to be like your main purpose. I'm glad that wasn't like the last mission or something where you finally save Emily. Like, it is pretty early on when you're able to save her, which, I mean, just on like looking from Corvo's perspective, like that's just got to be such a relief, like actually knowing that she's safe, not just like taken away to somewhere else. So lot of just satisfaction, I think, from completing that mission the first time, like experiencing it, but also even like now where I'm like I know the ins and outs of that place, and I can still just have so much fun, really just scanning it from afar and then jumping in. I like how when you enter the Golden Cat area, you're on like a building completely across from it, so you can like it's not just super obvious to, I don't know, like go down this one alley to get to the Golden Cat. Like you can go left where like the water area is. You can go right to jump onto another building that you can kind of like shimmy around to get onto the higher location, or you can just go through the front door if you're a crazy man, like I was on my first playthrough. But yeah, I love that mission so much. But as you mentioned, Dylan, it's kind of tough. Like I feel like I do have that. Like that top 3 of like the Lady Boyle's mansion that Briggs brought up already, Golden Cat, and then the return to Dunwall. But even like the lighthouse mission, that's got some really cool areas too.
That's great.
Another thing that I feel like just kind of gets me, it's like my weak spot in games, is when you have a location and then you come back to it later on. I love when games do that, especially for the Return of Dunwall, because it's completely different. Like it's a lot darker, obviously. There's a lot more technology involved to save the Lord Regent there. So it's tough to choose one, but I mean, I kind of cheated. I chose like 3 there, so I apologize for your answer.
Yeah, you don't have to.
Yeah, no, I'm the exact same way. I think if I had to say just one, it would be like the Golden Cat or Lady Boyle's Mansion. Those ones stand out to me the most in my mind. But I think in doing this playthrough, just again the last couple weeks here, I think I do have like different favorites now, and that's cool that I can kind of age with it and like look on the game differently. I think part of that too is that like once again I was so blown away by the DLC. Some of these locations really stood out to me going through them again. So I won't spoil what my ranking is there, but yeah, one of those 2 would be it for me. And then, as you mentioned too, I was gonna just bring that up. Is like, yeah, I love returning to a location. So you obviously do that with the Dunwall Tower sequence, but also the Coldridge Prison, right? It's like where you start the game, but then going back through there as Dowd in the DLC, and that's like kind of a different area of it. But just to get more, like fill out more of that and see more of that area is really cool. So that was a pretty fun sequence to go through that.
Good shout out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then. What was the other one? There was another one that's top of mind. I guess, this sounds like a basic one, but for me, it's like, once you're past through the prison, you've like done that main sequence, then just like the first couple times Samuel takes you in to that, like just the Dunwall Streets area where Granny Rags is up down the street there. There's like that one main building with like 3 or 4 floors. I love that you go to that sequence on like that first level, or I guess it would be level 2 of the game. And then like the third level, you also go back there, but then you're like going to a different essentially like loading zone from there. So I like the way that place is reused, but I feel like that's always when I'm doing a replay through this game that I'm like officially in. Like doing the sewers, it's like, okay, this is fine. It's kind of tutorially. It's kind of small. I don't feel like there's a ton of like variety in the ways you can go. There is still quite a bit. But then when I finally hit like the streets of Dunwall, that's when I'm like, okay, I'm invested again. I'm in it and I'm back. So I think for me, that would maybe be my mixed match answer to that.
As you were mentioning that opening area too, I just like totally got reminded of like the Overseer mission, and like I remember that being my favorite mission at one point in time as well. Just like the actual like office area of like the High Overseer. I love like the platforms outside, and just all like the detail that goes into it. So God, that's great levels in this game.
Yeah, like I have a few like to back mine up, but one that I think is like really just this I don't know. It's happened in many games. It's happened in a lot of music. But it's one of my favorite things when the end is returning to the beginning, or So
as a Pink Floyd fan, I agree with you.
On that. Right. So the fact that the first mission of Dishonored, and the last mission of Brigamore Witches are like the inverse of walking in, or maybe it's not the last mission of Brigamore Witches, but it's one of the last missions of Brigamore Witches, where you're literally walking back through the jail cell the same way, but you're coming into the level from the opposite direction. I don't know, such a cool moment, cool. Like where you're like, oh my god, I forgot about this place, I'm back, like, and it's just this remix, where it like having this familiarity, but being able to go in it from like an opposite direction makes you kind of think about the space a little bit differently and kind of how you're going to interact with it. Obviously, using Dowd, having kind of a different move set as well, I think is like, I don't know, it's just interesting.
Yeah, we'll talk about Knife of Dummel specific stuff in a moment here. But yeah, I mean, the lighthouse as well. Like, what a great just kind of final dungeon. The stakes feel so high. It feels so much more foreboding. It's so scary and all that. So that's a great ending to the game.
It's so scary in high chaos mode. Like in low chaos mode, it is imposing, but like. If I remember correctly, like there's not even really spotlights on. Like it just seems really like the security is kind of like lifted, which makes sense with where like the state of like it's not a high chaos world that you're living in that moment. But yeah, specifically in high chaos, I remember coming to that and just being really like, oh, okay, here we go. This is like that's my mission that I gotta go do. And then of course I had Samuel just shooting guns behind me, like freaking. I don't know, whatever the hell his name is.
You gotta shoot him in the head with a. You don't have to kill him, but just like throw a poison dart in him, and then, or not a poison dart, a sleep dart, and then.
In hindsight, I would have thrown a shredder right in his little ship there.
Oh my god!
So satisfying, just having that pop off.
I think maybe the one area of the game that I don't really care for is like the sewer sections. You go through a couple of them, and I think also for me the the flooded district is kind of when you get poisoned, and then Samuel takes you to this area. I think it's like the financial district. I do like the theme that is like the financial district that is just totally fucked and like underwater and decrepit, and where these assassins are like holed up and stuff like that. But I think those are maybe the sequences on replay throughs, I'm like just trying to getting through them.
Yeah.
But also worth mentioning is the Hound Pits pub, the what is essentially like the hub area of the game, and then I love too that switch up that your final time going through there is like actually a combat sequence in this area that you've spent all this time in a friendly way. It's also kind of scary. I think like sad in a way. A couple of like the servants and whatnot are just like killed and knocked off to the side and stuff like that. But I really like that as a hub area. I think Dishonored 2 has a great one as well. But that place always stands out in my head too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's talk about some of the stuff with the DLC here. So. Yeah, I think first off is just like, okay, you play as Dowd, which we've talked about that somewhat, but I think they do such a good job of making these characters feel very distinct. We talked about the Dowd's like different hand blaster thing that he's got going on there, but for me the biggest thing is of course just like the subtle differences to the blink and his when it like freezes you in midair, and that is such a fun thing to like quickly tap the space bar and like move forward a little bit. As you're like freezing time, it's kind of like a way to get the freeze time ability or the bend time, slow time ability on Dowd in a way. And then like his jump is just like feels so much different because he like jumps so much higher. Yeah. It's so amazing. But even like that, just talking future ahead, like the way Dishonored 2 and her blink is different. And then just like, Deathloop has that ability as well. And Prey has similar abilities. They obviously have got stuck on the blink. They love the blink. All these characters have it. And I'm excited to get into Death of the Outsider because I forget how Billy Lurks feels different because I'm sure it has some subtle differences to it as well. But I think that's immediately what feels great about the DLC is the game feels just good and fluid. But playing as Dowd, they also make him a little bit more powerful. It feels like off the bat, so you're not having to go back to power level 0 if you've just finished the main game.
Which makes
sense. Yeah, I love the
Master
differences. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. No, I love the differences too, even down to like when you're loading into a mission like Corvo you can kind of upgrade your abilities. But I like how he can like pull in favors or whatnot. You can kind of spend your money there. I would spend all my money on the favors just to see what happened. A lot of the time they would give you like unlockables like a rune or something, which was definitely worth it for sure. But and also just like even I love that first mission so much. I love the opening of just like you in his perspective, like going to do the assassination. I just remember the first time I loaded up that DLC, I'm like, God, this is gonna be a special DLC. And I like just having Billy like with you, kind of like just blinking in and out. Of course, she's not actually there helping you with the combat, but she feels there because every time that you'd come, like it's not like you would go a long time without seeing her. It seemed like you'd come into like the Granny Rags like cauldron or something, and then she'd kind of pop in, fill in some details there. She even gets captured later on in that same mission. So I felt like a different entity than what Corvo was, which could very much feel the same because it is obviously like the same game engine. You're doing very similar things. You have a blink, but it's slightly different. The one thing too that I will shout out kind of bugged me the first time I used it. It's not a big thing at all, but just I don't understand how he can have like the same like monocle like zoom in that Corvo has, and it's like the exact same screen
never
too,
thought
and
about it,
and you
yeah.
don't see him like pull up like a
He's not, he's not putting a mask on his face every time.
just every time. Yeah, he has like his two hands out and it just like zooms in. I'm like, Cade, come on down. I've seen your face. I know you're not
Yeah.
wearing anything there, but it's a super minor thing. I just remember the first time I used that, I was like, really? Come on now. I should be able to use this.
Yeah, you'll have to like go find like a reflective surface or mirror, and I don't think there really is any, or even like the water, and go zoom in on that and see what it looks like. See what he's doing there.
Yeah.
It'd be funny if it was just his eye, and he's
It's like a Mad
or
Eye
just, like, his
Mooney
hand.
sort of thing.
Yeah. Oh god.
From the skills perspective, from Dowd, I like the summon assassin thing is just such a
It's
cool
great.
addition. The fact that like you really do feel like the leader of this like underground, like I don't know. He's like the leader of the X-Men. He's like like every single person they all have powers, and the fact that he's just like points and they just materialize in a place and start going on a stabby stab mission is fantastic. And they get really strong. Like when you get to that second level of the assassins, I feel like you can go through that entire level as long as you have the mana without touching a single person. Like you just can literally, as long as you have line of sight on somebody, it's over for them.
Does that
I
count
never
as
really dabbled too
lethality?
much.
Do you get kills
No,
if you
I
do that?
assume so, but
I would
I'm not
assume
sure.
so. Because if you use like the, I'm trying to think of an offensive Corvo ability, probably like the whirlwind thing. Like I feel like you could really kill people with that, and that would apply
But this,
to it.
yeah, it's a bit different where it's like you're actually just calling someone in. It's not like it's a
Yeah.
void power. Right?
Good point.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I never actually really used that ability too much. I think I used it on like the first mission, and then just I don't know. I wanted to go into the bend time because I feel in my later
Yeah.
playthroughs I'm really prioritizing the bend time because it's just
the
it's
second
so
level
powerful.
costs so many runes,
Yeah.
so it takes
Yeah.
so long to get it.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
No, it's a blast though, for sure. Both of them.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I love to I like that you brought up the assassin. So that's a cool element to it where your guys are just like staked out on different roofs. And when you go to like the Timpsh estate and they have like that whole setup and you go and like get a debrief essentially, it's like, okay, yeah, he likes to go in this room, this is what he's doing, this is where like a good way to enter the building. I thought that was really cool. And also, man, that mission, like I totally forgot how good it was until I was going through it again this time. But I love that estate. That's probably one of my favorite just
Yeah.
interior, I guess, dungeons or buildings, whatever you want to call it. In Dishonored 1 would just be that because there's like 4 or 5 levels to it. I love the design to it. Of course, you can kind of snake around or go up on the bookshelves. And then there's like just other apartments kind of on the outsides as well that you can use the balconies of and whatnot. That was a really fun time going through there. And once again, especially like doing the non-lethal low chaos like ghost playthrough on this this stuff, like that was a very fun and like really good challenging area. And one time I was like up in the Timpsh estate and I was making noise. You know, I don't know if you guys went into this room, but in the top, I think it's the top floor, there's a room that has like one of those Delilah statues, and you might have to go in there because you might have to talk
Okay,
to
yes.
it.
Yeah.
Oh my god, I
Yeah.
know exactly where you're going with this. Yeah.
I was in that room and I forget exactly what I was doing, but I like made a noise, whether that was accidental or like threw a piece of glass or something. And then Timsh like walks up to the door. He like opened the door into the room, but like didn't walk in. And then I swear he bugged out because then he was just like standing in the doorway, like not facing in the doorway, but like half. So like it's like, man, is he gonna see me if I try and exit this? And I stood there for like 5 minutes. He did not move ever again. So eventually I was like, okay, I guess I have to find a cheeky little angle here to like blink to get past him. I
You
could have
can't
like
kill him, right? I don't think you're.
Well, I mean,
it's a
since I was
fail
doing
state,
non-lethal,
isn't it?
I was.
I think it's a fail state too. In that one, or something.
I
There's
guess-
something with him. There's something.
Well, because
with-
I guess if you hit him with a poison dart, then I'm curious how that ending exchange would go, where he gets like busted by the guards, right? Because you like do the thing where you plant the.
I don't know why I remember that one being a fail state, but I remember like being in that. I feel like I just was on
Well-
a spree, and I was like, "Oh crap!" There's.
Well, aren't you supposed to take him out? Isn't it like your goal that you're kind of doing? Or
Maybe I'm thinking of something else. I don't know
Well,
why.
but I mean, in the non-lethal version of it, you have to like plant the
Yeah, that's
the,
what
like,
I did.
poison whatever in the rafters, and then like he'll get busted, and like the guards will show up, and then he'll come outside and talk to them.
Yeah.
So I'm curious how that would go if he like poison darted him. Maybe he'd wake up, or maybe the guards like go inside the building and look for him. But if you put him in some weird like crevice or just moved him to a different rooftop, I'm very curious again how that sequence goes down, or if you just can't knock him out at all to get the non-lethal finish of it.
I think maybe what I'm thinking of is like end up hurting him, and then like you see that big X pop up, like you failed the non-lethal.
Oh, I see.
And maybe I'm just like, oh,
Gotcha.
I did something wrong here.
Yeah.
I probably like restarted thinking I wasn't supposed to kill him, and then just did anyway.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Dylan,
But
I was very much
ahead.
thinking of a different sequence. I
Oh,
think it was
okay.
from the Brigmore Witches, actually, where there is a Delilah statue like behind this like thing, and she's there, and then she like moves and does like a jump scare.
Yeah.
Scared the absolute shit out of me because I had not experienced something like that in all of the Dishonored games that I
Yeah.
played, and all of a sudden I was like, "Whoa, okay."
They're
yeah,
like
that's something.
breathing, right? Like they kind of move ever so. If you just
Very
stop moving and look
creepy.
at them, yeah, they're like hovering a little.
They're
bit.
like
It's-
alive. Yeah. It's,
Yeah.
ugh. I love
creepy
it,
stuff.
but I was scared of it.
Definitely a cool enemy type, like that they introduced later on.
Mm-hmm.
They needed to, I'd say, near the end of like Dishonored 1. I think them like adding like Dowd's assassins and stuff definitely spice it up. But like it's cool that they found a route towards introducing like entirely new powers and like
Yeah.
a different threat.
Yeah, that was the one part that I didn't fuck up for the achievement's sake, but like going through Brigmore Manor and just having all of these witches that are teleporting around and stuff. Where to this point I was able to get the non-lethal playthrough completely, but and even with like not even getting any bodies spotted, but that is very hard to do in Brigmore Manor. I guess even if you try and knock out everyone, like where if you leave a body in a very obscure corner off in the middle of what you think is nowhere, like a witch might just like teleport and go over to that at some
Yeah.
point. And so there was multiple bodies
Dogs.
spotted. So
Yeah,
oh my
dogs.
god, those like skulls and stuff. Yeah. That's a fun enemy type as well. So I think you're right. By the time the DLC rolled around, they needed to add some new enemy types in there to keep it fresh, and also just once again to let you fuck around with these powers in new and creative ways. And that was a
Yeah.
good way to do that.
I truly feel that Corvo is overpowered. Like,
Oh, yeah.
especially by the end when you're like fully ruined up, and I just feel like I could take on the entire Dunwell fleet or whatnot. But so yeah, but there is still just certain enemies that I feel just annoyed by. Like if I fuck up in front of an overseer and all of a sudden he plays his fucking music box on me, like I'm screwed. I have all these amazing powers, but what am I gonna do when the music starts playing? Just restart, I guess. Restart my save. I don't know.
Yeah.
Fire arrows,
Fire arrows. Yeah.
explosive arrows, yeah. Just blow
Oh,
the
fire
fucker
arrows,
up.
those help a lot in Dishonored too. That's a core mechanic over there. I think maybe the hardest part for me going through the DLC and trying to do this non-lethal ghost playthrough was the mission called the Surge, which is where you go through the like you're in the flooded district, like at Dowd's hideout essentially. Holy shit, that is so hard to do because most of the overseers are just walking around on these kind of like almost looks like a Fallout section, where these raiders like use like random sheets of metal to build like these
Yeah,
janky bases
totally.
and whatnot. But because of that, like there's not really any walls anywhere, and there's so many sight lines, and I would get spotted, and I'd look up, I'm like, that is the most obscure angle, but they are just like sniping me on the vision cone here. So that was like borderline frustrating, but when I actually got it, I felt really satisfied with it because I felt like I earned it. But yeah, that was maybe the hardest thing for me on the non-lethal playthrough was like, man, how do I pick off like who's like just anywhere where it's hidden enough? I had to bait them with whatever it is, shooting a crossbow into a corner to get them to go in a weird room or something like that. But man, that was difficult.
It's another one where like point A to point B is not necessarily the goal, and that makes it that much harder.
Yeah,
it's like, oh
good
no,
point.
you're saving all of your your fellow assassins and trying to yeah, like they're all being imprisoned around like 4 guards too, and you're like, okay, how do I handle grabbing one of my assassins in this like mosh pit of people as well? Like they're just surrounding them
Yeah.
half the time. It's like you really have to deal with them. And
It was-
it's tricky.
It was a good challenge, and it was funny too because like at the end of that sequence, I forget. I think maybe Billy shows up or something, and then you can like hit a button to like have your assassins like finish the level essentially for you.
Yeah.
But like by the time I did that, like everyone is already knocked out and in a corner somewhere. So it's like I'm like, okay, sick the dogs on. It's like there's no one left, not a single soul. Everyone is sleeping in a random building somewhere. So that was kind of funny.
Not a good place to sleep either. I feel like they're gonna
No.
get some rats nibbling on their toes.
I know. I had to be careful of that too. And there's a lot of water, so you can't just like
Yeah.
drop a body anywhere else; they'll instantly drown. Like in just 0.5 seconds, they are drowning in that water. We talked about the slaughterhouse mission quite a bit at this point. Like I also love just the sequences outside before you even go inside the
Yeah.
slaughterhouse itself. All those buildings out there, like the structure, it's kind of once again a daytime setting. So I really enjoyed that level. And then we mentioned this a bit earlier as well, but the Dead Eels, that mission where there's the Draper's Ward area with this kind of riverfront, and there's like the textile mill that you're going through.
Mm-hmm.
And that one's fun because, yeah, Kirkland, your point, like it's another neutral zone area where you can like team up with this, the gang. I forget the lady's name who you're teaming up with there. Yeah,
Lizzie
Lizzie.
something.
That was the level I was thinking of. So it's like
Mm-hmm.
the first real level of Brigamore Witches where
Yeah.
you're busting Lizzie out of
Right.
that
Yeah.
same jail that Corvo
Mhm.
was in the beginning of Dishonored 1.
Coldridge Prison.
Love it.
Great
fun.
name. But yeah, I love that you can team up with them, and that becomes kind of like a neutral territory, which
Mhm.
was offensive on the way in. And then I like busting up that boat. That was a fun little sequence as well, knocking everyone out on there.
A lot of moments too I found like through that specific DLC would be like you would just get a lot of information kind of given to you to help you out on your mission by just like not interacting. Like there'd be two people kind of talking. If you just like zoom in and just like listen to the whole conversation, like a lot of the times they'll kind of veer you in the correct direction that you should be going. But especially for like the one where it's just like gang wars going on, like you can just chill back and they just like dispose of each other. And it's
Yeah.
just like, man, I'm just watching, I don't know, Cops or something. This is intense. I like it.
I had a question about Brigamore Witches. Specifically, you guys did one or both of you play a low chaos run?
I did,
last time?
yeah. I did like non-lethal when I could, sleep
Okay.
darts and all that jazz.
Was Billy around?
Yeah.
Okay, because you kill Billy in Knife of Dunwall.
Oh,
the high
maybe I'm
chaos
thinking
run.
of specifically Knife of Dunwall. Is she around at Brigmore Witches? Well, don't you tell her to leave and she's gone by Brigmore Witches
Yeah.
time, right?
Oh, okay.
I don't think she is in Brigmore Witches.
I was curious
at
how
least-
they handled that if you kill her, because obviously you're not having that conversation. It's been so
Yeah.
long since I played the low chaos version that
Mhm.
all I can remember is Billy being dead, and then somehow in Dishonored 2 she's alive again.
Well, I guess
I think Delilah mentions Billy and how like, oh, you like couldn't even control her or whatever. She wanted the death of you,
okay.
something along those lines, just to kind of get under your skin. But
Yeah.
that's kind of it.
Well,
Gotcha.
essentially, because she like betrayed you, and then Dowd is like, "You should leave now." Like, obviously,
Yeah,
it's
you
something
can choose to
cooler,
spare
and
her or kill her in that moment, and
Yeah, and then
which
she
is,
just
like kind of
pieces out.
how Knife of Dunwall ends, and then obviously Delilah shows up. But,
yeah. So if you spare
um,
her, yeah, she just leaves, and then she's not
Okay,
around anymore.
all right. I was curious. I was like, man, that sounds like a really frustrating, like, story beat to tie up if they were like, oh, she's alive in one DLC or one version of the DLC, but like
Yeah.
in another version of the DLC, she's like non-existent.
Yeah.
Did you do the high chaos on Knife of Dunwall on this
Yeah,
previous one?
I did high chaos like this entire last.
How does
pass, I
that
did all
conversation
high-
go? Like at the end, is it like really different, where it's just like all your assassins and Billy kind of like confessing
Oh yeah,
that she betrayed you?
She tries to duel you. She's
Oh,
like,
okay.
She's trying to like fight you for, I guess leadership of the assassins.
Makes sense,
And- Yeah, and then you just kill her, and that's that. It's a bummer. She gives you a little bit of heat about the outsider as well. I remember.
Yeah,
'cause I
like
think-
throughout that DLC, it seems like she's like, maybe I'll kill the outsider one day.
Yeah. So
Wow, that's future proofing for a game
Yeah.
5 years from then. Holy shit,
Seriously.
that's crazy. Let's take our next break. We'll be right back. Have you guys spent much time with the Dunwall City Trials?
I did when I was trying to get like all the DLCs, or my gosh, all the DLCs for the game, all the achievements for the game that way back in the day. And I remember doing those and realizing that I probably won't ever get all the achievements because holy shit, man, some of them are so challenging. It's like make it through in like 90 seconds or less, only getting headshots. Like,
Yeah.
okay,
no,
okay,
thank
let
you.
me download my aimbot or something because I'm never gonna get
Seriously.
that.
Especially if you were doing this on like PS3, like on a controller,
Yeah.
that would be insane. Yeah, I've only ever played this game on mouse and keyboard.
Yeah, dabbled a little bit. I think it's fun. Like before the other DLCs, because it's just like more content to kind of mess around with these abilities or whatnot. But like now that like we have the DLCs, I feel like I'd rather just go on to that content because like although the trials are a cool idea, it's not really necessarily my cup of tea. I like the stealth ones a lot more. I think versus like the time trial ones.
Yeah.
you're not alone in, I guess, this hate for the achievements in that part of the game. Like, the whole reason I have never touched Dunwall City Trials is because the Steam reviews have been horrific on it since like
Ooh,
day
interesting.
one, and it's like one of the only Arcane related things that is just like torn to shreds on Steam, and it's 100% because of the achievements. People are like, it's a completionist nightmare.
Yeah, it is.
So I just never touched it because I was like, all right, people don't seem to be loving this that much. And most of the time when I'm going through these games, like obviously the first pass I was like super invested. It could take as long as it needs to take. But like most of the times that I've played this game, I was like playing it before Deathloop came out. I was playing it for this podcast. So I was like, I'm moving, like I'm going through this, and like every time it gets to this, I'm like, I don't have to play this.
Yeah.
I can move. And I was like, I could play Dunwall City Trials, or I could play Dishonored 2, and I always just start playing Dishonored 2.
Yeah.
So, yeah, people not a fan of this one, but I don't know. There's people who are like just happy to have more of this gameplay too, and if
For
people
sure.
aren't torn up about the achievements, it seems like it's still like I don't know. It's the mechanics of Dishonored. It's gonna be a blast.
Yeah. Yeah, I get it. There's even ones like that are combat trials. And I think that like that particularly doesn't interest me. Like I would prefer to just fuck around with the game systems and get a funny kill here or there, but I don't necessarily like set up these Rube Goldberg machines of like kill opportunities. And in those missions, you're kind of given limited opportunities and whatnot anyway. So yeah, it's not something I've ever really played much of. Like I probably have less than a couple hours in terms of trying some of these things out, looking through my just save file on Steam. Like I don't know, I've done a couple of them. Got like there's like bronze, silver, gold. I think for some of these things too. I think I've got maybe a silver here or there, but like not something I've really messed around with a whole lot. But maybe someday I'll want to
Close the gap one day, man.
I feel like it was one of those things, where like when I was in my peak Dishonored time, that's when I was really trying to do those trials.
Yeah.
And I just had the terrible realization I will never get all the achievements for this game that I
That's too
absolutely
bad.
love. But who knows? Maybe one day when I'm all retired, old man, crazy mechanics for some reason.
Yeah, that's
got those like
wait until
robot
then
attachments
for the reaction time ones. Yeah, right.
Especially if you're playing on Steam, you can just like maybe hack your achievements in a little bit.
There you go.
There's always a way.
Sure.
Always a
Yeah,
way.
I guess I still have like achievements to get in the base game, so I guess I've never gotten to that point where it's like, okay, the only thing I have left now is the city trials. So I guess that makes sense there.
And like speaking of the achievements, you're can't remember if it was even you. It was a couple hours ago now, but we were talking about some of those achievements on there and just the difficulty to touch them. Oh my gosh, it's been a long cast. to achieve them, like Dunwall City Trials alone to the side. Some of them like get like kill however many enemies like within like 1 second or something. Just so satisfying to like actually do that. You're kind of limited to only being able to do that on high chaos for obvious reasons, killing that many people that quickly.
Right.
But like even certain things like the one that I mentioned where it's like be in possession of someone for 3 minutes, like it really makes you rethink about these tools that you've been given in the game and like how can I achieve this end result with them. And some of the achievements might be a little bit too extreme, especially in the city trials, but I think for the most part it's not too easy. It's not like you're gonna like just coast through them and just by beating the game you'll get all these achievements. It really makes you kind of have to go after them, but I really liked how some of them kind of made me rethink just the tools that I've been given how to use them. So
Yeah, that was a great memory for me playing through Deathloop. Like that was just a really fun thing because they have a very similar achievement of like, get this many kills in this amount of time or travel this distance or something like that. And we're just with the game the way that game is built where it's like, okay, I'm going to go into Updom in like the afternoon. I think that's probably a good time for me to try and line up this achievement. And it almost like works a bit better for some of those things. But yeah, it is cool that they kind of just hint at things you can do. Because if you're just playing through the game first time, you're probably not going to be looking at some of that stuff. But then if you're just so in love with the game and you want to do more and more with it, then I don't know. For me, like that is where it comes into play for some of my favorite games is like, oh yeah, a good achievement list actually goes a long way to just give you this whole other experience with it. So that's something to appreciate for sure. Here's just a couple things. I feel like when we were playing Arcs or when playing Dark Messiah and doing those retrospectives, we talked a lot about the things that like, man, Dark Messiah, there's a lot of Dishonored DNA in here, and I don't think we need to go through all that again. But one thing that I didn't really clue into was like the head bob, and like there actually is a lot of head bob in Dishonored, and I'm so used to it now. And like Dark Messiah is like
Never experienced
2,000% more head bob in terms of your character flicking around. But like I guess I had never clued in on that. Well, yeah, this game does have like kind of a head bobbiness to it, which makes the game feel really good in moderation. Obviously, yeah, Dark Messiah maybe went a bit over the top, but I think that's just one of the puzzle pieces that makes this game feel so great. And once again, like, oh man, just climbing ledges feels great again. The way the blink, like, changes to the arrow if you're like just about on a ledge, and it'll make you climb up there. Little things like that just are great. So it's cool to see those improvements from the earlier titles.
I turn that off before I even start playing a video game. I would go into the settings and
Even
turn
in
head
Dishonored?
bob off, motion blur,
Oh, that's
like
hilarious.
film grain. They all get shut off immediately. So I would not know.
That's amazing.
The head bob is, I think, like it's the right dose in this game.
Okay.
Yeah.
It
Well
just
done
is,
here.
it's handled so poorly in so many games. I don't even like take
It
it as an
is.
option.
Mhm.
So maybe I got to turn that bad boy back on for Dishonored. Going
Yeah, no, I mean, Dark
Give it a
Messiah is
try,
like
at least.
your character's like
Yeah.
made of jello. It's like insane.
Like actually, yeah.
Another thing that I was cracking up laughing when I encountered this in this game was we talked about an arc. So there's that sequence when you're going through the goblin base, and that fucking key is hidden under a pillow, and it's like, man, how would I ever think to look here? But then when I was going through Brigmore Witches and there's a key hidden under a pillow, I was like dying laughing. I'm like, man, I love that this is a trope that they have done before in their previous game, like I guess a decade ago at that point. But it's just one of those things. Like obviously Elder Scrolls does it too. If you have a game that's this interactive, but even then, like Dishonored does not. You can't really interact with many pillows. Like you can.
No.
There's a lot of interactable stuff, but not every object. Like even close to arcs in terms of how much you can interact with there. But for this one random pillow, they made it so you could pick it up and move it. It's almost like a giveaway. It's like, oh, of
Yeah.
course there's going to be something under here.
Now
I
you have
thought
to
that was
check every
hilarious.
pillow.
I know,
Or,
right?
Every
like,
Arkane game.
Yeah.
No, it was really good. I had a question for you. So Dante, we talked about this once again in Dark Messiah, how one of your critiques of the skill tree system, the progression, was that you were just kind of like, you didn't really know what the quote unquote like level cap was. So it was unclear like how
Yeah.
much of the skill tree am I going to go through here? And I didn't really think about it at the time, but like Dishonored kind of has that exact same
Same.
limitation, but I'm guessing you don't really have an issue with it here. And I'm or maybe you do, but I'm
Well,
curious if you thought about that as you're going through it
That's
again this time.
The only reason, maybe Dark Messiah has this, and I didn't realize because we were playing it for this. This has a new game plus, right? So, or at least maybe just Dishonored 2 has a new game plus. I think this has a new
This
game
one,
plus.
this one doesn't, does it?
Yeah, never mind. I told you
Dishonored 2
I
does,
jumped
yeah.
right into 2
Yeah.
and maybe crossing the streams a little bit. So yeah, no, I think that would be that's still kind of an issue because maybe I know what I'm going towards. I think the skills are so much more clear to me. Like,
It's
okay,
different when
I
you've
know-
replayed a game 700 times. Obviously, you
Yeah.
like, know what to expect roughly how much of the skill tree. But yeah, it's like it's hard to remember back in 2012 that I was like, oh man, I'm so frustrated. I don't know how many I'm gonna be able to
Yeah,
get. By
I
the
feel
end of
like
the game.
the investment to like try a skill out is you can probably like try everything, at least in the main skills, not
Yeah, for sure.
necessarily the passives, but like by like I don't know, the
You can get
halfway
level
point in
1
that
of everything
game-
for sure.
Yeah, by the halfway point in this game, you kind of know like, oh, I'm going for non-lethal. I'm not going to touch whirlwind. That's going to kill people, right? Like, so you just stop looking at stuff as options. In this, whereas I wanted to figure out how what every option was to kill people in Dark Messiah, and feeling like I could just barely get to the end of a tree, and also the gear perspective of Dark
Yeah.
Messiah, feeling like I didn't feel limited in Dishonored, regardless of feeling like I had to go down a skill tree maybe in a direction that I wasn't necessarily thrilled with. I never felt like I was being like hamstrung in the same way.
Yeah.
And then Dishonored 2, not to get ahead of ourselves, but completely gets rid of that problem because it has a new game plus, and you can just literally use all the runes from your previous playthroughs, which is they need to add that back into.
That's-
Dishonored.
well, that's
That
what I was
shit's
gonna
super fun.
That makes me so happy because I didn't know the second one had a new game plus, and that's exactly what I was gonna say. Is like I always wanted that in Dishonored 1 because like balancing, like they would definitely have to add more enemies like in those earlier missions. If all of a sudden I can just stop time, like whenever, and just pop off, shoot like 10 headshots, and just be on my way. Because it always felt like like if I'm starting a new run, especially high chaos, like I have to wait until, I don't know, the third or fourth mission until I get access to some of like the more powerful abilities. Because yeah, like Dylan said, you can definitely dabble in them all, but I think going from like level 1 to level 2 on some of the abilities, it's like a significant jump in power, especially like the slow time versus completely
it's
just
crazy.
stop time where no one can even like see you for that amount of time. It's a heavy investment, but you get a heavy reward out of it. So that was always something I really wanted, and it's only really relevant on the higher chaos playthroughs, I think, because that's where you're really using all your powers to just pop off on people. But I mean, I'm happy knowing that they added that in the second one for sure.
It's a blast. It is super fun. Like you feel broken from the get go. I can't wait to talk more about that.
Yeah, I guess the only limitation of that is that it's like by character, right? So like if you beat the game with Emily and then you do a second playthrough with Corvo, you could not do New Game Plus in that way.
That makes
Obviously,
sense.
They have a different. No, I thought you had to continue a save based off your character.
No. I'm playing Corvo with all of the runes I got in Emily's playthrough. So I'm just starting off as like maxed out Corvo.
Okay, well then it's unclear the way it's written in the menu. Because when I was starting a new playthrough with Corvo, I was like, oh, only Emily is the only one I've like actually have a completed save with here. So okay, well I'll track that.
I have a boss ass Corvo starting off the beginning of Dishonored 2. He's
as he should be.
Yeah,
that's the royal
it
man.
feels accurate. It feels story accurate. I'm like, how did we lose all of this? But there's lore reasons for that as well.
I guess so. Right, if you're coming from the first game, your character should be stacked out. The bone charms, I don't know if I love them here. I think it's like, it's a fine addition. It gives you more things to find and collect in the world. I love the look of them, like the sound they make when you're near them and all that stuff. I love the visual, like in your inventory, they look really cool. And then just give you like small buffs here or there, and you can, because you get enough slots, you can put on like, when you're doing a non-lethal playthrough, put the one that makes you quieter when you're sneaking or faster or choke people out quicker and stuff. So it's totally fine. I think it's cool. They've really revamped that system in Dishonored 2, and I think, is it in Knife of Dunwall when they give you like cursed bone charms? I think it is by the time.
I think this is another one where I started playing
I'm not too sure.
So fast after Knife of Dunwall that there and Brigamore Witches that I'm like, oh no, some of this is bleeding together a little bit.
I want to say no.
I couldn't stop. I was so in it. I was like, man, I want more Dishonored.
For the podcast listeners, we had a big gap between Dark Messiah and Dishonored 1 in terms of our recording times, but yeah, Dishonored 2 is like next weekend, so we had to like all kind of start before we recorded this thing. But yeah, that is a system they've gone a lot deeper with on 2, so we'll talk about it then. But I don't have any issue with it here. I think it's totally great. I still always go and hunt them out and find them, and I like them. But yeah, I don't know if they like elevate the experience too much by any means. But
yeah, I feel like you have so much more time to find them and create a build when you're playing as Corvo that it feels almost like there's times in Brigamore or all of the Dowd stuff where I'm like, okay, I kind of wish that I had all of these kind of already in my inventory to tweak around with. Having
a New Game Plus
again,
element would be good for that, for sure.
Yeah, or maybe you just like, I don't know, there's once again no lore connection, but maybe he just has all the same bone charms that Corvo had by the end of your first playthrough.
Right.
But
yeah,
I agree. I think maybe they're a little less they feel a little less impactful during the Dowd's piece.
Yeah. I don't think it's a perfect system. I like you said, Dylan, I like the lore behind them and like the look of them for sure, and just like there's even like certain interactions, whether you're finding like someone's I guess all the outsider shrines have them, but like there'll be like a note where someone's like really hiding this from something, and it'll be like a bone charm. It's just this like dark thing that they're holding on that they don't understand. And then of course me, it's like, well, I'm just taking this because this gives me plus whatever, right?
Now I can eat rats.
Yeah, there's an interaction as well with Emily. I remember where she had one, she found it, and then she said she like had it under her pillow. Funny, the pillow thing's coming back, but it was giving her nightmares, so she didn't want it anymore. Which makes sense because it's like it is. It's not an evil thing, but it is very dark.
It's a good foreshadow for her
outsider.
eventually getting the mark as well in the sequel. Yeah,
absolutely.
Cool. Have you guys ever done a? Well, it's not no powers because you have like blink as a mandatory ability, I think. Have you guys ever done a playthrough like that? Because I know that's one of the achievements.
Yeah, I did a
Scary.
naked playthrough. I only did it once. Definitely a lot harder.
I don't know why
'cause-
anyone would ever do it more than once. I feel like you do
Yeah.
that, you get that challenge, and you're like, okay, I got the achievement. Unless you're getting on multiple platforms, I guess. But
That was exactly it. And I'm pretty sure I actually tied that one in with my clean hands playthrough, so it was like extra
Wow,
challenging.
that's impressive.
That was one where I felt like Frodo at the end, where I was like, it's done. Like, oh my god, let me go to sleep. Like, like that took so much brain power out of me. A lot of resaving as well. I probably didn't do it on the harder difficulty either. I would imagine because they just have like spidey senses on the harder difficulties. They hear like one thing, doo-doo, get that little audio thing go off. But yeah,
no one's
I
saying
did
it must
do
have been
once.
rats in that. They're like,
Yeah.
oh, it
That was
must have been
Corvo,
Corvo. Yeah.
Yeah. He's to blame. He didn't even like it was like Grady Rags or something like that, and he's just he's number one on the list.
Congratulations, Kirkland. Though
Thank
that's
you.
like
Yeah,
that's an impressive feat. Fuck the
I wanna check the
city
date.
trials. That's an achievement right there.
I want to check the date on that achievement because I'm curious. It was probably like many moons ago, many years ago, back in the high school days, maybe. But
Yeah.
I'll double check.
With that in the bag, you have to get all the achievements in Dunwall City Trials now.
I probably have like
Yeah, how many
zero
more achievements
on
do you
Dunwall.
need, Kirkland?
Like a decent amount, honestly,
a
because
bunch of city
I
trials
was
ones? Okay.
I was on that mission or that not that mission. I was on that journey to get them,
Yeah.
and then I reached that giant wall. It's like, oh no. And I did the clean hands one, no powers, really? Come on.
I'm doing not a no powers run through Prey right now, but like a similar thing. I'll talk about that in that retro. But that's just it's a fun way to engage with the game in a different way. And I think at some point I do want to do the no powers run in Dishonored. I think it's just the playthroughs when I go through this game again. So it's always like such a big period of time that I'm like I don't want to do that run right now. I want to go through and see the whole experience. But maybe next time I do that, it would be a fun way to give myself a nice challenge on the way through. Do you guys have anything else? I think I like burned through most of my notes at this point.
Say we've exhaustively talked about some Dishonored today, which is not a bad thing. And it has me like incredibly excited to talk about too, because
Oh, yeah,
like
can't wait.
you, there's something about that one now that calls to me a little quicker than the original does, and I don't know. But I'm excited to do these rankings. I'm excited to see 2 through the end and see how it stacks up against this truly exceptional game. One of the best ever, easily.
Yeah, I
This-
agree. I agree.
I mean, once we're done it, this will probably be like the most games I've ever finished in a year, which is crazy because it's all
Nice.
Arcane. So
Yeah.
thank you, Dylan, for lighting that fire under me.
It's an
couple-
at what
Sky
cost
trophy.
moment though, because Dante, I think by even like March last year, I already had like 15 new games in the can. I've played like 4 games this year. Like, like our end of the year rankings are going to be smaller, at least for me, than they were last year. I don't think I'm going to hit the 60
already got-
games that I had
there's-
last year.
There's
I don't know, man.
list of
Redfall and
happening so
Starfield,
far.
when those come
Oh,
out, I'm
there's
not
so
playing
many games
anything
coming
for
out
like
this
a
year, dude.
month. So
I
yeah.
actually have a stacked year ahead of me. I'm really excited
Yeah.
about it.
I lo-
But anytime.
Dylan, I like how we're on like opposite sides of the spectrum. You're like, oh, because of this Arcane retro, I'm not going to finish any games. Like, this is the most games I've ever completed. Couple things to
amazing.
shout out. One thing I don't love in this game, which I really just avoid altogether, is actually the throwables, like a grenade or something. I really don't like the system that they have in place where you just have this like bar, and it just seems like you get no like arc or anything on your throws. It's just like
that
if
a
that
cook?
bar. Yeah, it is.
Okay.
But it's also like, well, actually, maybe you can answer me because like, does it go a different distance or is that only for cooking? Because
but I
it
can-
seems
Well,
like you
there's
just
a-
throw it
It's a cook.
straight.
That's a bone charm,
Yeah.
right? Is the like to throw things farther?
Oh, okay, there you
Yeah,
go.
maybe
I've
that's-
dabbled
At
in
least
the
there is in
throwables
Dishonored
so
2,
few
but
amount.
I know that's one of
Yeah.
those things where like you probably wouldn't equip it then if you don't care about them in the first place. It's almost like a self-fulfilling
This
prophecy.
was my
in a
first
way.
time using them because I've always done low chaos runs in
Yeah.
this game, and I did use some grenades this time around. I'm pretty sure it's just a cook.
Yeah, okay.
It is,
What
yeah.
whatever it is, it's not satisfying to me at
Yeah,
all. I
fair.
take great pride, if I'm playing Call of Duty or something, I can time those grenades so well. I can like arc them so well. I just know the distance. In this, It's like, I don't know, man.
It's
I don't know
like,
if I'm
as a
throwing it
crow
over.
flies, the way that the grenades work. He's just
Yeah.
like, they're just straight. It's like,
There's
hope-
It's
no
like-
fall. There's
It's
no
like a
gravity on
dumbbell.
those.
You're
yeah.
just like, fuck. It's like a shot put. You're like, what is my record
Yeah.
here?
I won't say I never use them because there is some times where maybe like a couple guards are just like talking. And it's like, okay, well, this is easy. I'll just cook it and toss it. But I feel like they're very unsatisfying, and that's definitely a system that they could have improved. It's not the main thing of the game. The sword is a lot more satisfying to use. But yeah, don't love the throwables. Enough to throw it in my notes.
Definitely became my go-to strat when there was like 3 or 4 dudes running after me after I fucked up royally, and I was just like, I'm just gonna start like pooping out grenades as I run away.
See, man, shredder. You just drop a
Yeah.
shredder down.
Just
Yeah.
anything to get the job done at that point. I was like, get the hell away from me. Usually grenades are just getting like martyrdomed behind me.
It's one of those things that, similar to stealth game thing. I feel like the Hitman system where you can just like hold literally every single thing in the whole world in your pocket makes it so like, okay, I'll pick up just whatever the soda can is and use it in some way. But the fact that you like have to hold a glass bottle like in front of your character and you just
Yeah.
have to hold it the whole time, you can't just like put it in your inventory. Maybe that would be nice if you could put like 2 or 3 things in your pocket. But then again, you can just like shoot crossbow bolts at the world, or mostly what I do is I just like find like some glass or something in the environment and interact with, whether it's like some steam out of a vent, and interact with that to get a guard to get distracted and come check out this sound, or just make a loud noise, like hit the wall with my sword or something like that. But definitely doesn't feel like I'm very rarely just throwing throwables around for sure.
The bottle thing too. It's not new. I remember like the first time I played this game, as soon as I picked up the bottle, I couldn't like put it away. I'm like, man, this is so like Splinter Cell, which is like that memory is it's just stuck with me this whole time. Where every time you're playing Splinter Cell, you pick up that bottle, he just still has it like in his hand as he's going on. I don't know if they changed that in the later games, but definitely in the early.
You gotta
early
throw it
ones
at
for
something,
sure.
man.
Gotta throw it at something. I think we mentioned it with like the art style when we were talking about that, but just the paintings throughout the world in the main
Yeah.
game,
It's
it's
so
like
cool.
a collectible as well. But I just love that they're around. I like how it's kind of like in the intro, you're kind of like you see Sokolov doing the painting of the High Overseer there, and then throughout the game, like these collectibles would be paintings that he did, and I just really like that. They're familiar characters. It's a fun thing to collect for sure when you find them. But like not even the collectibles, like just the paintings overall. I think just the style is really, really well done, really beautiful.
If they never did that as merch, I'm upset. Like, I would love to have a
Yeah.
Sokolov painting framed in my
That'd be
house.
cool.
You know what I mean?
That's 100%. That's a good point. I'm gonna have to look into that. Or
That's another
you
great.
you let me know.
Yeah, I'll let you know.
That's another great sound effect as well. Is like the sound of ripping
Yeah.
them off the actual painting.
So satisfying.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing too I loved about just like the world of Dunwall, although these missions that you go on are very linear, I still really felt no dice there, Dante.
No, I don't think this is a real
Unfortunate.
thing.
Damn.
All right, it's time to make some money, guys.
Yeah. Exactly.
A little copyright infringement.
Oh, there's some.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Like it definitely looks like somebody got a scan out of the game and was like, all right, let's make some money here.
Let's make some money.
Oh,
Right on.
Yeah.
Beautiful
they
paintings.
beat,
But
they beat me to it.
yeah. For the world of Dunwall, although the missions themselves feel linear, I still, as I was going along, felt like it was one world, one city that I was in, especially because of like Samuel the Boatman. You'd be leaving the Hound Pits pub and then going to a location that like it is in the same city, and you could actually like if you're at the Hound Pits, you could see like the Sokolov Bridge. Like off in the distance there,
Yeah.
and then if you go on the boat to that mission, for example, the Sokolov one, you can see like the tower where they have Emily in at the Hound Pits, and I like it's just backdrop again. Like there's probably not much detail if you zoom in or whatnot, but I just liked how it wasn't just like a wall or something that I just couldn't see anything out there. Like I still felt like on different missions I can kind of figure out where I am in Dunwall, even though I don't have like a world map. And it's probably just something I picked up on like my 4th or 5th playthrough because I was just obsessed with that game. But I really, really like that detail, and it fit too. Like if I was on the Sokolov mission, it was like I was in the proper location to where it was situated from where I was looking from like the Hound Pits, for example. Like it made sense where I was. So I just really like that decision for them to go that route. It's probably a very minor thing that people pick up on, but I just, it went a long way for me. It really felt like I was in Dunwall, even though I'm not like a free roam sandbox game to explore.
With a game that has like so many like skyboxes and like allows you to see like parts of the city, it would be really jarring, I think, to be in a place where you're like, okay, I can picture myself in a zone from this city, and then like start doing the math and be like, wait, this doesn't make any sense. Like they just popped this level here just cause. Like, I think they kind of had to, like, despite the fact that the levels are so like compartmentalized, like it's really good that they did create, I don't know, like the city, made the city feel like a real city, and continue to do that in their later games as well. Like, I don't know, like even Deathloop, you can kind of like see things off in the distance. And
if you're in
like
Updom, you
you're
can
in
look
this
down on
space.
Carl's Bay and see like it's not as highly detailed, but you can be like, oh yeah, there's that part of the map.
Yeah, it makes you feel like you are in this world, and it's not just like you're in distinct levels, which is it's smart considering the stories that they're telling.
Yeah, Prey does that too. Like that is a fully realized and like quote unquote functional like space station. Like they really go through that level of detail. It's all connected, and yeah, obviously the fact that you can go outside helps bring it all together. But yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Kirkland's good point.
And then a couple other things would be, we mentioned some characters, some other ones that we didn't. I mean, we briefly mentioned Granny Rags, but I just really like that inclusion of that character. She's so like freaky and weird. You don't know if you can trust her or whatnot, which you probably shouldn't because she is like very sus. But I just like the inclusion because it's something that kind of keeps you. I mean, for myself at least, it kind of kept me like on edge anytime I'm kind of interacting with her. Like, where's the turn where she's just the villain and she just turns with this giant raven lady or something? I don't know. Like she just was so strange. I didn't really know where we were going in the story the first few times I was interacting with her, but. I mean, it always made me happy because she usually gave me a rune.
She would be a killer like prequel DLC because apparently she gets the mark as well.
Oh,
like,
yeah,
that'd be cool.
There would be some really interesting stuff with her because she like, I don't know, like she has one of the best wiki pages out of everybody.
Ooh.
Like, it's a blast to read through. She has definitely some more going on than you'd expect, and there's definitely like it makes you think like, oh, it's everybody who ends up with the Outsiders mark end up in this like twisted direction, like breaks their brain in this kind of way that she's just like, just I don't know, having a difficult time being in reality for most of the game. I don't know, she's a cool one for sure.
Yeah,
they mentioned her name a bunch in the game, and I never realized it was her name until I'm like looking at the wiki. Right, her name's Vera. Right, they mentioned her.
Nice.
Interesting, yeah. I did not pick that up. That was one, Dylan, where I remember like the first time I used the heart on her, and just like the detail there that now I know Jessamine was filling me in on of just, there was a point in time when like the richest men would like just kill for like her hand in marriage, and like it didn't go that route, and then where she is right now, living in this really just dark, decrepit place, like just basically cooked out of her mind, just made her very, very, very interesting. I wish we got that DLC. That'd be interesting, especially like playing as like a female character before Emily. I think that would have been very, very just mind blowing at the time.
Totally. Hey, who's to say it won't happen?
In the Death of the Outsider episode, we'll have a lengthy conversation about what we want to see for the future of the series. But that would be cool as well. Yeah.
And then the other one I'll quickly throw out is Slackjaw, the Bottle Street Gang guy. I just really,
I didn't
really
interact with him on this playthrough, so that's why I kind of forgot about him. But,
I mean, it is just like all side stuff there, but another just great voice actor for him. I like his like attitude that he had. He's like this tough, Bottle Street Gang like leader, but every time that he interacts with you, like he just has this like respect for you, and just like gets straight to the point. I don't know, there's something about him. I just really like on all my playthroughs, I feel like I want to go out of my way to interact with Slackjaw. I really, really like him.
Best facial hair in the game, easily.
Yeah, absolutely, he does.
Yeah. Serious handlebar going
on. I think that's all I know. Oh, and I just shout out the opening to the game. Holy shit, you feel Dishonored right from the get-go. I love the opening, returning to Dunwall. And then you have these just like supernatural assassins going there. It just goes from like 0 to 100 so quickly, and then just like that opening or the title card just like shows Dishonored, and it's like fuck, okay, this is what I'm doing now. Okay, let's get into it.
Yeah, once again, like another just good example of this game having fantastic storytelling without it having to like just gab nonstop. Like, there's so many games that just feel like they need to just have people talking to you left and right. Like there's the only other game I can think of with as good of decision making is like games like, I don't know, like BioWare games. You know what I mean? I mean, that's all dialogue.
Yeah.
Right? And there's so little here, but what they do say like counts, and then all of the world building around it kind of fills the gaps in I don't know, in a way that like I don't see any other developers writing stories like this. It's like the closest I can think of is like, I don't know, like a Souls style thing where like you're reading and engaging with the world.
Right.
The more that you engage with it, the more you have an understanding of the story. Although in a Souls game, you don't have no understanding of what's happening until
you're going on the
really,
forums.
really deep.
Yeah,
exactly. Where at least this, like, you get the baseline story, but there's so much more there, which is, I don't know, it's really interesting to me.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. If there's nothing else, then
there is something actually.
something else.
I found the achievement.
Kirkland, you said one more thing. Like,
I found the achievement. I found the
Keep
achievement.
going,
I
keep
found the
going.
achievement, boys. So it was paired in with my Clean Hands playthrough. It's called Mostly Flesh and Steel. So finish the game without purchasing any supernatural powers or enhancements beside Blink. June 17th, 2015 at 5:05 p.m. is when I achieved that one. So
what is your total?
Just wanted to flex.
What is
on
your
it.
total achievement completion there?
54%.
Wow, that's
There's
Yeah.
probably a lot in the DLC. They should
Yeah.
separate
That's
those. I hate when
crazy.
they lump the DLC.
Yeah.
too, because you get like 100%, and then you're like, oh, now great, I'm at 50%
Well, I guess
again.
you also have more to do, like playthrough wise, on Brigmore Witches, I guess now, since you just said you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so there might be a couple more things there.
Yeah, exactly. Like Brigmore Witches, I still got to do the high chaos one, as well as just a couple more like that. I mean, you just play through the game a couple times to get those ones, but yeah, like I still
That's
haven't made
crazy,
others kill 5 of their own allies. That's something I thought I had already had, but yeah, there's a couple in there that I definitely thought I had already gotten, but those
Maybe you have it
damned
on PS3. You have a trophy for it.
Yeah, see, I got to compare the two.
Yeah. Good stuff. Okay, this was awesome. This is exactly what I was looking forward to for weeks or even years, honestly, at this point. We've been really long overdue,
really years.
Kirkland, to do this. I'm glad you're here on this adventure, of course, Dante. And
Happy to be here.
thank you, everyone, for listening. Cannot wait to get into Dishonored 2, then Death of the Outsider, then Prey, and then we're just doing the rankings right after that, where I feel like we're already like halfway through this thing, which is kind of a crazy thought. But thank you, everyone, so much for listening, and we'll see you again in just a few days. Bye-bye.
See you later.